Greetings from the tavern and welcome everybody to the third match of the day. My name is Frodan and I'm joined by Brian Kivler, and as we go deeper into day number 3, more players are dropping by the hour. Brian, another player eliminated. The third player from Asia Pacific also eliminated too. No player from Korea is guaranteed to make it into the World Championships this year. Samuel Tao is the only remaining one, and he's from Taiwan.
Yeah, and we've seen some great games so far today. And moving into the second half of the day, we have some other fantastic matchups, including world champion Pavel coming up very soon.
All right, well, Lovely Chuk lives to play for another match. But coming up next, we have world champion Pavel from Russia up against DocPwn, the player from Canada here, who says he's having a good time and he's here for fun. But with the stakes getting higher, you kind of have to imagine that he really wants to win just as badly.
And these two are coming off very different performances. DocPwn won his first match against Yulsik and then fell 0-4 to LVGE. Pavel, on the other hand, lost to LVGE and then defeated Yulsik 4 games to 0. So coming off a crushing defeat versus an overwhelming victory, it's very different for your mentality.
That's right. And you have to also kind of imagine what momentum really does mean for both these players. Pavel, even though it definitely looked like the first series could have gone his way, was able to clean up for the second series. DocPwn, he definitely had moments where he said he wasn't exactly sure if he was even playing at his best yet. But as we've seen with Frozen, another day could mean another opportunity to prove yourself.
Yeah, he definitely said that he felt like he may have struggled a bit. And Pavel is someone, he's been behind, he's been in the sort of elimination matches many times. And he said he's not nervous, he just knows he'll play the best.
All right, well, it's time to bring out our players. Our first, the reigning world champion from 2016. Please welcome to the stage, Pavel. His opponent, hailing from Canada, please welcome DocPwn.
It's go time! DocPwn versus Pavel.
Played LVGE, got crushed. I played bad, like it feels like I've misplayed a bit.
I'm playing against DocPwn. To say if it's good for me or not, I need to analyze his deck a little bit more.
I was telling people that they would ask me because I was in his group, and people were telling me, "Oh, are you afraid of Pavel, or do you want to play against him?"
I think that a lot of players get extra pressure just because they know that they're playing against a world champion.
Having a chance to beat the reigning world champion is something exciting. And if I beat the world champion, then it feels good.
DocPwn versus Pavel. Ready, set, go!
We are ready to get into match 3 of day 3 here. It's going to be DocPwn versus Pavel. Newcomer versus pretty much swiftly becoming the old guard of Hearthstone now. He's been playing so many tournaments, so many victories, and obviously the current world champion. What do you make of these two players and these two players' lineups?
Yeah, I mean, it's difficult to evaluate this one. Pavel has played just fine, really. Nothing spectacular come out from him. He's just, powering through as best he can. The lineups here, no great surprise. No real, ace in the hole decks between the two of them, and Pirate Warrior banned out on both sides, so pretty standard stuff. DocPwn, though, is the more interesting case perhaps in this spot because he is the player that's admitting even to himself and to camera that he is not performing up to the standards that he sets himself, and that has been echoed through very clearly to the people who have been watching him play. Some very identifiable mistakes being made at crucial moments from DocPwn. Now with the stakes higher than ever for DocPwn, he has to tidy that all up because he has the most fearsome of opponents up against him.
Yeah, this is going to be the game where we're going to work out what type of player DocPwn is. Can he, he's seen his mistakes, can he sort them out, fix them for this match, or is the pressure going to be too much? We're going to get into game 1, DocPwn on the Warlock, and Pavel rocking the Priest for this first game, sorry.
Yes.
Twilight Whelp off to a quick start.
Yeah, sorry. DocPwn is got himself into a good spot here off the back. You know, decent matchup queued into. We have seen, you know, TJ's description of the way Dragon Priest needs to play some matchups, the reckless aggression. We have seen that happen on 1 or 2 occasions, and Dragon Priest being able to overwhelm Reno Lock quickly if they don't hit those key AoEs. But DocPwn has got the best of the early roll here and queued into a favorable matchup for himself.
Yeah, it's looking pretty good for him. The Discover coming up for Pavel now. Nothing too crazy. I normally read that card as Discover a Legendary Dragon myself, as it's much more common, but...
You're doing it wrong. You just take Draconid Operatives off that thing all day
Well,
long.
okay. I mean, that is a Legendary Dragon in my book,
fair
so...
point. Yeah.
The Sorcerer is a good pick over the Twilight Drake here because it's just more consistent. You know, he might be forced to use some more cards building up to turn 4. It's just not going to be that powerful in general, and there are plenty of rough cards in Pavel's deck, Powered Shield being the main one here. Blackwing Tech on curve is huge in every way of the word there as it slams it onto the board. Start chipping away, and this is the kind of scary opening that DocPwn has to be worried about. You know, as you said, it's a good matchup in general, and he does have a good selection of answers here. But nothing quite lines up that well. You know, Shadow Bolt in the Twilight Whelp, it's like, well, it is just 2 power at the moment.
Yeah, but I mean, the old Handlock rulebook states that, you know, DocPwn has to play a card this turn. He either has to pass completely or he has to play out here because, you know, the Mountain Giant in hand being 4 already means his hand will fill up on the next turn if he does not play a card.
Telling me he can't coin Mountain Giant in this scenario.
The forbidden APM plays, Raven. No, unfortunately not possible. So something does have to be played here, but the Blackwing Tech pickup from Pavel was enormous because, yes, he got off to a nice curve 1 into 2, but they weren't threatening minions. They weren't high attack. It wasn't loading that much power up onto the board quickly, which meant DocPwn would have had time to sit back, chill, get through his deck, pick up AoEs with that one gap in the curve between 3 and 4. But now that was filled perfectly with the Blackwing Tech. Pavel is right on track.
Yeah, we're going to see how Pavel wants to respond to this Imp Gang Boss. He has a very easy way and an insta-kill with the Shadow Word Pain, but then that would just float 2 mana. He doesn't even have anything to heal with it at this point. So I do like the Twilight Guardian, just continue to stack on the pressure. It's not like the Imp Gang Boss is going to be able to punch through that anyway. And Pavel has the Shadow Word Death and the Shadow Word Pain, so both flexible removal tools here for Pavel for pretty much anything that's going to come down from DocPwn in the next few turns, as long as it's not a Twilight Drake.
Yeah, Nether now is picked up by DocPwn, but a long, long way away. Nether and Big Shadow Flame, Fellfire Potion if it's a card you're playing. These are the big tools that you do need to hit. Quite often, even more so than the Reno itself. The heal factor is great against Dragon Priest, but they're not a straight-out damage deck. They are a stats-on-board deck, so they're not going to rush you down incredibly quickly. They're just going to put a huge amount of numbers on the board, and you need to be able to interact with that favorably. Reno Lock has a lot of ways to do that. They have a lot of AoE options that can essentially deal with any number of stats on board. Twisting Nether can literally do that. Power Overwhelming in combination with Shadow Flame has a good chance as well.
Yeah, can't blame DocPwn at all for this turn. I think there was nothing really else to do other than drop the Mountain Giant and kind of cross your fingers and hope there is no Shadow Word Death in hand. But there was a slight sort of a nod from Pavel there as soon as the Mountain Giant was played, just saying like, great, this is the one I wanted him to drop, and I can deal with it very, very easily indeed.
Look at this turn, though. Wow, Corruptor actually maybe introduces an element of complexity, but I doubt it because he has just got the perfect answers here with Death and Pain to clean up this board if he wants to do so. Might choose to forego the Pain just in order to heal back up his Twilight Guardian at the end of the turn instead. Looks like that is the line he's going to go for.
It's effectively negating the Imp Gang Boss either way, right?
Yeah, exactly.
The damage doesn't matter if you just heal the 2 attack back up again. You dealt with the Imp very easily with the Nether Spike there, not missing out on 1 damage to face, I guess, but not going to really matter too much normally in the long run. Last Crystal is drawn from DocPwn, but feels like it's just a little bit too little too late at this moment. I don't know if you can afford to take the 1 crystal breakage from the Last Crystal Potion here. He kind of needs all the mana he can get to try and catch up.
He is dead on board right now. There is lethal showing to DocPwn, not even accounting for that Blackwing Corruptor in Pavel's hand. So he does have to make some kind of defensive play here, be it Shadow Bolt, Farseer, any combination of the above. But I agree with you, that Blast Crystal Potion is just a little bit too much. And you can see Pavel's starting to feel the comfort levels already. Those glances across the desk that we've been seeing come out this whole week are starting to come out. He's trying to stamp his authority now as a world champion. He recognizes his role in the scene now. He knows he's the man to beat, and he can use that as an intimidation factor.
Yeah, and it's something you wouldn't have seen from Pavel, this time last year, for example, at all. Is the growth in confidence since performing so well and becoming the world champion is blatant for everyone to see. And never mind people who see him too often. Bran into
Coin Farce here.
Okay. It's gonna. This does the sort of that pushes him out of the direct lethal range, of course, but also presents quite a high-value target that Pavel might choose or decide that he has to deal with instead of just continuing to push face.
Yep, and Pavel is going to be very, very glad that he held on to that Shadow Word Pain. DocPwn on the turn previously actually chose to get some immediate value out of his Imp Gang boss by attacking in and spawning the 1-1. That was actually very likely a nod to Shadow Word Pain specifically, just playing around that card, trying to get some increments of damage in. But now, the fact that he did play around Shadow Word Pain has come back to bite him because the Bran is an even more high-value target than that Imp Gang boss to take care of.
Yeah, and this is going to be huge for Pavel if he can steal this game, because whenever you end up with a matchup that is a very easily losable matchup for you and you get that win, it's so impactful in how the rest of the series lines up.
Pavel just considering the trades here. He can push 6 more to face, which would halve DocPwn's life total, leave him at 6. Doesn't then threaten lethal from hand if the board is cleared, but the bigger question is how can a Warlock possibly clear this board on only 6 mana? The only combination that comes to mind is that power overwhelming Shadow Flame that I was talking about.
Yeah, it's going to be the only way he can realistically do it. Reno would extend this game if it comes off the top, and it is not. In fact, Reno is a Twilight Drake, so that's not going to be enough. Are there any outs at all here? I don't think so.
So Blast Crystal only takes the 3 out of play, leaving 9 exactly remaining. So that would be lethal on board. Mistress and Shadow Bolt your own Mistress. Does that get you anywhere? That heals you back up to 13, and there would be 12 showing on the board. So that technically would keep DocPwn alive from his position, as miserable as that play would feel. But Pavel does have the damage in hand with that Blackwing Corruptor to cover that anyway.
I think that that play could be amazing if this was a 7-mana turn, because then you can go into Twisted Nether. Dragon Priest not really known for its burst damage from hand. Yes, there's a Corruptor and we can see Pavel has it, but if it's only one or one of 2 cards you're playing around in the whole deck, might be what you need to win the game. But this is just going to be insurmountable for DocPwn so far, and it looks like Pavel is very, very close to taking a 1-0 lead. It's going to be the tap. Siphon Soul not going to be enough, and DocPwn is going to concede game 1. Pavel taking a quick one with a matchup that would have been quite easily losable there.
Yeah, interesting choice at the end, 2 life tap. I mean, the play we suggested is ridiculous and is gonna win the game.
We do often suggest ridiculous
It's gonna win the game by an absolute fraction of a percent, but it is there. If you're saying, okay, Pavel, you don't have any form of damage, you can then just draw Reno the next turn and the game's back to square one. So I can't think of a specific card that DocPwn would tap for there that would give him any better outs.
Yeah. So, we talk about Pavel a lot in terms of confidence and the way he's just looking quite casual here, and we can even see him. This is not the first time I've seen Pavel, I'll say, play fight another Hearthstone player. This happened right before the match. He is in a good mindset here, very happy, very playful, and wow, he went for the chair. I'm glad we cut the recording there. We won't reveal what happened afterwards. It was too much to show on stream, but when you are doing things like that right before an elimination match to get through to the World Championship to continue your chance, you must be feeling very, very confident.
Ice running through his veins. Even in the warmest and most beautiful of climates here in the Bahamas, the man is stone cold. So calm, so confident, so relaxed to be messing around like that just before such a huge game. But that's not to say that he's taking this seriously, because look at the transition from the shots you just saw to the look on Pavel's face now. As soon as it's business time, he switches on, and he is an absolute stone cold killer.
Yeah, and you can absolutely be relaxed and focused, right? It's just because he looks serious doesn't mean he's not relaxed. He's just very focused on the game at the moment, and we're going to be moving into game 2 as the players lock in their classes. DocPwn, though, he looks very focused himself. He's sort of, I think a loss like that is just one of those, well, that's how some games go sometimes. You know, Dragon Priest curve out, I don't have what I need to stop it game. It was a fairly straightforward one, at least from my perspective.
Yeah, I mean, the only thing you could maybe go back and look at is DocPwn's mulligan choices. I confess I don't remember exactly what his mulligan process was, but sometimes if you get into that spot as the control deck where you're just saying, well, I didn't hit the cards I needed against this deck that just rushed me down, maybe you mulliganed incorrectly. Not for me to say, because I don't quite remember what the process was, but always things you can look at in a game of Hearthstone before you do go with that defeatist mentality of, oh, it's just one of those games.
Yeah, and DocPwn now going for his Dragon Priest of his own to go against Pavel, and Pavel on the Rogue. Already, Rogue has got a bit of a story so far today in terms of its lack of good win rate. Do you think this is just a small sample size so far, or do you think the deck might be suffering a little bit in the current sort of tournament meta we're seeing here?
Well, before I answer that question, let's just take a moment to appreciate Pavel's turn here. As my good friend and teammate Super JJ is fond of saying, the Rogue gods have blessed you with the Edwin hand here. You just go ahead and play it. But actually, both these decks, both these classes have struggled almost equally in this tournament. These are the two lists that are getting exposed more than anything else. More often than not, when they are picking up their wins in a series, it's in the mirror match, where one of them is being forced to. But Rogue has just been struggling with those kind of cannibalistic draws where all these powerful combo tools in your deck just come together in your hand at the same time, and you don't have any of the stable minions available to you. Priest, on the other hand, it just seems to be running into poor matchups just step by step, and it's even often squeaking through in matchups where statistics suggest it shouldn't, such as that Reno lock game that we just saw.
Yeah. Pavel now with the huge Van Cleef as an 8/8, but DocPwn has been able to slow the advancement down, not taking all the damage to face, has been able to get out the two Wimmer stations, sorry. And this is if this is going to happen and you don't have the instant Shadow Word Death, this is the next best thing. Just stop the direct punches to face and try and get some big minions of your own on the board, start contending this Van Cleef.
Yeah, since there's no Shadow Word Death, Pavel, just with this Edwin Van Cleef, can pretty much do the job he needs to single-handedly. With that Auctioneer Prep coin in his hand already, he basically just needs to control the board, not fall behind by more than a single minion or so by the time turn 6 or 7 comes. If he's able to do that, the insane explosive power of his Auctioneer turn will probably pull him ahead significantly. So no death to answer this Edwin, even if this Edwin is constantly stalled by this Wormrest agent, by a Twilight Guardian, whatever other taunts can go in the way, it's doing the job just fine, and that's keeping things nice and stable for Pavel as he moves towards that Auctioneer in hand.
Yeah, it's shaping up very, very well, and DocPwn is going to continue with the curve and just try and let this Edwin effectively sacrifice itself upon multiple minions, as you said. But Pavel now piecing together an absolutely ludicrous hand, being able to clear off this Wimmer stage, and even going for the sap and saying, no, I want you to play that minion again, or move on with a different minion on curve on 5. And this just means that, the Van Cleef might even just get a swing in if the Eviscerate comes out next turn to clear up the tech.
Yeah, most importantly, it plays around Blackwing Corruptor. If it would leaving the Edwin on 4 here, it means any additional source of damage on the board would mean Blackwing Corruptor was a clean clear there. Suddenly, Pavel is behind on tempo. Sap is one of the most powerful tempo tools in the game, and its usage is so flexible. Just, sending back an expensive minion for 2 mana and then developing behind it is one way that you can protect tempo, and then the other way, the usage that you just saw there, is sapping to protect minions that you already have on board, which makes sure that when you have tempo, you then keep it.
Yeah, and Pavel's got a few choices for his next turn, potentially able to get that Gadget Zen out, but DocPwn has a few choices of his own here. Could just play the Guardian. Well, he could just play the Guardian, but feels really bad because it just gets ate up by the Van Cleef. Can't really follow it up with the Twilight Whelp because then all of the dragons are gone. Do you just have to play the Guardian at this point?
Yeah,
and then just go into Dragonfire next turn?
The Blackwing Tech and Twilight Whelp together is something that maybe you can contest against just a second Sap or against a Spell Damage Eviscerate if that's your opponent's hand. But just playing the Twilight Whelp here would be very exposed to something as simple as Backstab. So DocPwn just going to go ahead and re-drop the 3/5 here, and now Pavel has decisions to make. How much of a rush is he in with this Gadgetzan Auctioneer right now. I think I actually, with the Barnes drawn, like playing the Barnes here because you threaten this 8-1 dealing a ton of damage. You can also pull a high priority minion out from Barnes, which will then be a hard check on your opponent's hand for Dragonfire Potion, because it would almost certainly pull it out in that spot if it's there. If the Dragonfire Potion were to come out, then you can go ahead and refill with your Gadgetzan Auctioneer afterwards.
Yeah, I do like it. Isn't going to go with either. Just going to rely on having this Van Cleef continue to sit on the board and become a huge problem. And to be fair, the Van Cleef alone, you know, Pavel knows there's no Shadow of Death in hand, right? He just knows 100%. So it's like, well, if you've got Dragonfire, well, you're probably going to have to use it at this point. How many 8 attacks can you take in this game? Because this Van Cleef has been a threat, and his kill count is pretty high so far. And another attack is just going to make that even worse at this point.
Yeah, I completely agree with your assessment. Obviously, you have the hard read of no Shadow Word Death. The one thing that this line does expose you to that you don't necessarily have to be exposed to is the Shadow Word Death top deck. That is always a possibility, and this board is, of course, very weak to that card being drawn, or 2 copies of that card being drawn. But, you know, Pavel is happy here. He knows he has time. He's not willing to play around niche outcomes like that because of how powerful the rest of his hand is.
Also as well, you know, worst case scenario, Shadow Word Death comes off the top. Well, that's half your opponent's mana this turn. What are they doing for 3 mana? And then you play Gadgetzan and go crazy. You know, you're probably going to be able to deal with it. So even the worst case scenario wasn't terrible, and that is a pretty good card to come off Barnes now. Not going to be able to get too much done with it this turn, but just it being on the board, even as a 1-1, is a threat in itself. And
hello.
Yeah, Shadow of Death in the 1 health minion. Fantastic.
Yeah, this is ended up really creating the same situation I talked about, where it's a hard check for AoE. Holy Nova at least, Dragonfire Potion would be the ideal pull. It's happened a turn later. He can still go ahead and refill with Auctioneer after this if the AoE were to come down.
The Corrupted Pain looks really good here,
It does look solid.
Because, you know, just in case anyone's forgot from what happened last turn, there is a poison on the dagger. So the Barnes and dagger attack is actually using up sort of, you know, a portion of the Deadly Poison card as well. So I do like this turn from DocPwn. It does allow him to keep hold of the Dragonfire Potion as well. But here comes the Gadgetzan.
Cold Blood pickup, gonna go ahead and slam it. This is a lot of value going into the Dragonfire Potion here, but Pavel considers that he made his soft check at least on the previous turn, so not too concerned about playing around it. And even then, the nature of Auctioneer just means all these resources that are being expended are replacing themselves in hand anyway. Coin Conceal would end the game in the case of 1 single copy of 1 tech card, specifically Dragonfire Potion. If that was not in hand, the game is over right now.
Yeah, and I like this as well from Pavel. He's looks like he's weighing up the attack just to face.
It's just correct. This is just right.
Dragonfire, well, kills the Corruptor. You can take 5 damage. You don't really care at this point as the Rogue here. And then, you know, if you traded, well, why? You know, you can just push them for lethal, especially because there's plenty of juice still in the hand for Pavel, as you said.
Yeah, little small things that the very best players will get right, and the players just the tier below will sometimes get wrong. There is no need to take care of that 5-1 there. Just take the extra damage. The only card that beats you, the only card in DocPwn's list, which Pavel has full access to, knows it card for card, is Dragonfire Potion. Dragonfire Potion comes down, that 5-1 is irrelevant.
Yeah, and just insta-lock the next turn for Pavel there. Just 2 Tomb Pillagers, boom, boom, 8 mana. Seems fantastic as well after seeing the Dragonfire Potion. Now it would require 2 deaths, and as far as Pavel's concerned, although it's becoming more and more likely, of course, that a death is going to be drawn as the game continues, but as far as he's concerned, he's not seen a death all game, so if he plays 2 Tomb Pillagers, even if 1 gets dealt with, well, he gains a coin anyway, and he still has more follow-up with the Shaku, has the sap to gain more tempo and defend his board, and an Eviscerate, so even if these 2 Tomb Pillagers got cleared up, Pavel is probably still in a good position after that.
DocPwn is just furrowed brow, deeply trying to work out some way out of this game. I do like this plan right now, just getting the big Bran on the board. That means if the Bran is not dealt with, and remember, DocPwn has already seen 1 sap being used. If this is not dealt with, that is a huge Defender of Argus taunt next turn. Not only on the 2/10 itself, but getting the double buff effect on the Argus as well.
Yeah, but Pavel gave his good friend Gadgetzan a call. Number 2, And now it's going to come out now and just draw so many additional cards. 2 powerful gadgets and turns, pretty much one after the other, with you know, the Tomb Pillagers in between, of course. But he can trade, or at least start to work on trading these Tomb Pillagers if he really wants, or just end the game in the next turn or so. This is looking very, very difficult for DocPwn to dig himself out of this one.
Yeah, that questing was drawn at the absolute perfect time. If it was a card later, it wouldn't really be high value, but now questing Backstab Sap the Bran here is massive. You can even afford quite comfortably now to take the trade into that 3-4 and protect your board, but in this spot, you have so much damage backed up, it almost does not matter where this 5-4 attack goes.
Yeah, Leroy into Eviscerate next turn as well is just going to spell ultimate doom here for
Pavel,
DocPwn.
no surprise, chooses the honorable option and goes face.
Of course. I expect nothing less from the champ. Twilight Guardian, not going to be enough at this point. We can see there's just a lot of damage available, even with the heal onto, you know, DocPwn healing himself. Well, just the cards he has in hand for Pavel here is going to be enough to do the damage, and the minions on board were able to punch through any taunt he chooses to drop down here.
Bran Argus can come down here, but the issue with that is that realistically, one of the taunts he needs to make is that 3-2. That needs to be buffed so it can trade into the minions on the board. Then that issue compounds further, because are you trading into the questing or are you trading into the auctioneer? There is just so many dilemmas in front of DocPwn now, and I don't think this Dragon Priest deck just has the resources in it to be able to solve them all.
Yep, he's going to go for it though. Going to give it a whirl and see what happens. Obviously, he doesn't know exactly what's in Pavel's hands, so can maybe expect there not to be the burst there, but it did seem like an aggressive play.
There are 5 cards left in Pavel's deck, so DocPwn actually has a pretty good idea of the cards that are hanging around, and it's going to be the questing that bites the dust here. This gives Pavel full access pretty much to the entirety of his deck at this point, and now with the Cold Blood picked up with the Leroy, that represents lethal through these taunts quite comfortably. Leroy and Avis would have done the job anyway. 9 connecting to face. Pavel looking comfortable yet again. Since his slip-up in the opening round, he has shown his extra level of class in this group up against the other opponents he's had to deal with.
Yeah, really great start for Pavel here. DocPwn definitely on the back foot, going 0-2 down against the champion, but you know, Pavel's just looking super relaxed. He's not even looking stressed. We're quite used to seeing, you know, Pavel get himself into kind of sticky situations a lot of the time, and then sort of, you know, fight his way out of it, as opposed to, you know, this series where he's looking pretty good already.
Yeah, and he's just growing into his role as world champion time after time. His play is staying solid. He's giving great entertaining interviews. He's becoming a personality. And he's also, just from his mannerisms, his little quirks while he's sat at the desk, showing that he is ready to be a dominant force in Hearthstone.
Yeah, and speaking of his mannerisms, we can check out what Pavel thinks about his the way he approaches his opponents whilst playing the game, being able to give them a few choice stares himself.
The reigning world champion, hailing from Russia, please give a warm welcome to Pavel.
A lot of players get extra pressure just because they know that they're playing against a world champion. For example, when I played against LVGE, I seen he was very nervous. His body tell me that.
Pavel's one of the most dominant HCT players of all time, 75% win rate.
And you also get extra pressure just because he played against me.
This game is becoming less and less winnable for Yulsik every single turn that passes.
I think that no one play better than me, and I'm sure that other players respect me. So I hope get another World Championship, which is my main goal.
Pavel implementing tactics outside of the game as well as inside of the game there. You just saw a few of those moments across the last few days where he just glances up at his opponent at choice moments. And as we saw, some of them clearly, you know, even just visibly do not enjoy that moment.
Yeah, it's actually the original literal definition of the metagame. Actions outside the game that affect your chances. And Pavel is proving to be a master of that as much as he is actions inside the game.
We even just saw the look then on the
right.
cameras. We were even talking about it. Pavel just glancing over at DocPwn, just saying, how's it feeling, friend? As we move on to game 3, Pavel on the Warlock, DocPwn going to the Druid. And again, I feel like this matchup is one the Warlocks can get some work done. It's becoming just a theme with the Warlock being a powerhouse because it has the huge, probably the best and strongest AoEs in the game at the moment.
Yeah, absolutely. It can do extremely well at going the distance against the Druid, and Pavel here is probably going to be well accomplished as to how to ration out his AoE, and we've seen DocPwn in particular kind of make a few mistakes in terms of how aggressive to be in this matchup, how hard to force that AoE to be there for the opponent. He's mentioned himself that he was going to go back, look at his games. Yep. Maybe there are a few things that he's done wrong that he can correct later. I hope for his sake that timidness against the AoE of the Warlock is something that he's noted as well, and we'll see a much more aggressive push in this game.
Yeah, and DocPwn, if you guys don't know, actually does have a history of competing in some other games as well.
Yep.
So he is probably experienced enough to say, well, yeah, of course you analyze your games, you work out if there's any, a few bits you can improve on, and then work on it next time. It's something that's probably comes relatively naturally to him. And looks like in terms of this hand, he has a lot of Jade potential very early on in this game with double Jade Spirit after this Jade Blossom.
Yeah, I think it's time for a bit of real talk here though, Raven. DocPwn and Yolsik, the two other players in this group, Pavel went down into the lower side, the loser side of his group very, very early. And, people all through the community were assessing his chances. And the first thing we got to see was the game between DocPwn and Yolsik. The reaction to that was these two players are going to have to step it up, or else Pavel is going to have a fairly easy road through the lower bracket. And so far, Pavel has made it look that way. He ran through Yolsik 4-0. He is now 2-0 up against DocPwn. There is potentially a skill differential being shown here in this group, but DocPwn still has time to use his experience, use his how did he put it? Experience overcoming the young minds of the other players to sharpen up his play and really find another level that can compete with the world champion.
Yeah, and I really do think he can. I've spent some time with DocPwn over the course of the few days that we've been hanging out, and the way he talks about the game and the way he approaches the game in general is definitely correct. He's, as I said, he is more than happy to go over games and get some help. He's been doing some practice with Sidonia, for example, who's a very storied player already, even after his short time, sort of from coming out there as well. So I think he's definitely got a reasonable chance here. He just has to maybe not let this start from Pavel throw him off. Just have a lot of options now. Double Innovate means he can make some pretty big plays onto the board. It's looking like he's going for one. Is it going to be Uproot? It is!
Wow.
DocPwn, you win this game, please. Win this game for me. Anyone who uproots, I'm a fan. Sold.
Twice in one tournament, we have seen the early 10-5 Ancient of War, and DocPwn himself, he said, hey, I'm a student of the game, so maybe he's like, hey, I saw this earlier, that seemed like a good play, let's just make it happen. And amazingly, how impactful could this decision end up being? Because if he played it as a 5-10 here, Pavel himself would have no response to it, could have played a Doomsayer just to try and occupy, and there would be no response just for that extra 2 damage needed to finish it off. If it was in rooted form, this 10-5 takes that out of the equation completely. There are some options to deal with it though. Leroy can trade, Spellbreaker can cut the attack in half for Pavel.
Yeah, I mean, obviously I just like uproots.
Who doesn't?
Exactly, it's just great to see. But in all honesty, this turn could be a Twilight Drake, a Mountain Giant. We can see a Mountain Giant in hand.
Right.
He challenges all of those. It lives through a Twilight Drake. And we see, something we discussed previously, Pavel bringing more of his own lists, Spellbreaker being a card that isn't super common in the list, and even Spellbreaker making the Ancient of War 5-5, well, you trade into that and still live. He has gone for the Mountain Giant, and if I was DocPwn, I'd be like, well, okay, I played 2 Ancients of War, I'm okay to trade my 1 into yours on curve as well.
The crazy thing here, for me, is that Pavel, against something as simple as Mulch, is risking himself going down to 10 health without Reno in hand. He does not have that stability option to be able to bounce himself back. This is an incredibly brave play from Pavel. He had those options in hand. They weren't perfect. Leroy does sacrifice a massive win condition in this matchup because you can't hang around forever against Jade Druid. You do often have to have that burst combo. Spellbreaker was less than perfect. There'd still be a 5-5 on the board, but they were answers. This risk did not have to be taken. Pavel's saying, nope, the risk does need to be taken. This is a high-pressure moment, and I'm going for the high-risk play.
Yeah, it's looking really interesting here. And we've talked a lot about a player and his hat over the course of the past few days. But what you guys might not know is DocPwn has a few opinions on his hat and his hoodie that we've seen him in every single day in terms of this tournament. So have a listen.
When I play on stage like this, I need to wear a hat and even like a hoodie just to feel more like in the zone, not to be distracted by players or people, and that could be considered as my armor.
DocPwn wearing his anti-Pavel armor. If he dips the hat low enough, he's not going to see Pavel staring at him, so won't get thrown off. And it's actually a reasonable thing if you know your opponent likes to do these things and you think it might throw you off. Don't look at them and block all line of sight if possible. But this is just a board state I'm not used to seeing, to be honest. So I'm looking at this and there's just, Mountain Giants on there. We're on turn 6 for Pavel here, and he's on 10 health against a Jade Druid, and it's not been due to a swarm of Jades early on and some big Innovate plays outside of this Innovate Ancient of War being uprooted.
Pavel has willingly put himself in this situation. That's basically what happened here. And now I'm wondering if this was the line he was pushing down, where maybe he can bait his opponent into going face, getting greedy with that 10-5. That gave him 2 possible options that turn. He could have siphoned the 10-5 and traded, or he could have gone with the Shadow Flame Doomsayer play that he decided was superior. So maybe this was the master plan all along. Force DocPwn to get greedy, punish him for it afterwards.
Yeah, and this is normally a fantastic setup here, as the Druid just doesn't realistically have good answers to the Doomsayer. Before the draw, we could see Wild Growth in hand for DocPwn, which is okay to play, but on 7 mana, you're not really good after it, right? You want the card draw at this point in the game, but with a Nourish off the top, I'm okay cycling at this point. I'm just going to draw 3 cards, and then yes, Pavel gets the initiative onto the board, but you've drawn so many extra cards, you pretty much keep up with the Reno lock here in terms of card advantage.
Yeah, it's one of the dream cards you want to have in your hand. If you don't have a way to regain tempo when a Doomsayer is played, as the Druid, Nourish is the #1 option to have because it allows you to do so many powerful things. And here is the X Factor card.
Oh my god, I forgot about Yogg.
Yeah, I mean, whenever DocPwn is queuing up his Druid in this series, as many times as it may be, this might be the one and only time we see it. He could play it for the rest of the series. It all depends on the results. But whenever we're assessing a matchup, everything we say has to be added to with that asterisk but Yogg afterwards, because Yogg can just throw matchups out the window.
Yeah, and we might even see it. We saw DocPwn he actually did play Wild Growth to increase his mana and get towards that turn 10 a little bit quicker. He has so many spells available to him. He has Fandral and Wraths, well, multiple Wraths as well to get value from that. So a lot of options and a lot of ways to increase the spell count that's hidden behind that Yogg, just waiting to bust out.
He's in a position now where some of these cards like Innovate are starting to run out of usage apart from being able to fuel his Yogg-Saron. Unlike most of the Druid lists that we've been seeing in this tournament, there is no Gadgetzan Auctioneer in DocPwn's list. He's playing more mid-game utility options with the Druid of the Claw, and then of course that Yogg being packed in as well. So where other players have been playing 1 and sometimes 2 Auctioneers to be their big, control buster card, that's where DocPwn is inserting this Yogg-Saron.
And it definitely, if anyone's seen Yogg before, it definitely has the ability to mix up a game and potentially steal a win from the jaws of defeat. But DocPwn is looking pretty good still at the moment. He's on 19, health dipping a little bit low, so he uses this Fandral to clear up these minions, even going for the hero power, presenting Fandral just on an empty board, and any minion on the board at this point is a threat when Pavel's rocking 10 health and no Reno in hand currently.
It seems like his Brave play has so far paid off. He willingly got himself lowered to 10 by allowing that giant uprooted tree to connect with face again. But since then hasn't taken any additional damage and hasn't needed to. So the greedy play might have got him out of the situation in a more elegant form than a panicked reaction would be. But still stuck in an awkward position. Fandral is a premium minion, an absolute board objective that needs to be taken care of. And the only clean way to do it right now is with Siphon Soul, which
That's not pretty.
Eats so much of your turn up.
Yeah, and it's not as if as well. Oh, okay, take it all back. I was going to say it's not as if you feel yourself in a good position to tap and Siphon, just because yes, you gain the health from the Siphon, but it still only puts you 1 more health than you were at the end of the turn anyway, which is still relatively low. Druid of the Claw, a card we haven't really discussed too much, that's in DocPwn's deck, and some other druids aren't running it. Well, this is just 4 damage from hand at this point. It's a definite consideration here for DocPwn. I just like both Jades.
Both Jades definitely seems reasonable. That Druid of the Claw can be used to follow up afterwards. Since it can be played in cat form and just get them for 4, front-loading the other damage from the Jade minions would allow him to maximize the amount of damage that he can output over 2 turns.
Is DocPwn considering Yogg into Pyroblast into whatever for Arcane Missiles?
Don't tease me with these things.
Imagine if that was the first 2 spells. That would be sick.
Would it, though?
It would? Look, okay. If anyone's noticed, me and Sol are a little bit different in opinions about things. And that was just clear evidence as to how. Swipe, another huge card for DocPwn. This is 8 damage from hand, not counting the spell damage, of course. We'll see if the Azure Drake lives. 8 damage from hand available that he can play next turn, and there is still no Reno available for Pavel. And he's got so many cards, he can't even really tap into it.
Yeah, no Reno in hand, no strong AoE in hand either. His AoE tops out at that Demon Wrath right now, which does not get the job done here whatsoever. So Pavel just hasn't hit the key options. No Nether, no Shadow Flame, no Fellfire Potion, no Reno, no Kazakus. None of those cards have come together, and those are the key answers that you do need to be able to stop Jade Druid in its tracks.
Yeah, I think this is going to have to be Sylvanas Taunt. I was looking at whether you play the Backroom Brawler? Something or other card?
Yeah.
Yes. Whether you look at that Bran and Taunt just to get multiple Taunts out, but Sylvanas effectively steals a minion anyway, or forces your opponent to inefficiently trade into it to remove all their minions regardless. So the Sylvanas kind of works out in the same way regardless.
This is lethal. Many, many ways to do this.
Oh, another swipe.
Swipe face, hero power Sylvanas is 100%. That's the one I see. There's probably multiple ways to get this done. But DocPwn sees the lines, and he is going to get his game on the board. Pavel recognizes it. DocPwn has improved on the showing, at least, of Yolsik against Pavel. He is back to 1 game to 2. And like he's been saying, his experience in competitive games in general could be coming in big in these high-pressure situations.
Yeah, and, you know, we saw realistically off the back of that brave play of going for the uproot and just saying, right, I have the opportunity to make a huge play here. Pavel isn't on the board at the moment. What could his answers be? And there weren't really a lot of answers even available in the deck that would have worked really well at that moment in time. So opening up that kind of potential for damage and to get really ahead has actually been huge in this game. And, you know, this isn't the only game DocPwn plays. He actually plays a few others as well, as we've mentioned, so we can check one of them out here.
I was a kid that was into a lot of sport, playing soccer, playing hockey, playing tennis, ping pong. I played foosball competitively. I was considered a pro. When you think about it, you know, you're just like, but it's really not an easy thing. It's not like you're going to a bar and you're playing a game of foosball. The World Championship of Foosball are amazing. I would put that in the Olympics. In Montreal, it's really serious, and I was quite good. Like, I wouldn't say I was in the best, but, you know, I could hold my own.
And DocPwn seals the series and advances over Yeltsin.
So being on the stage, people watching, it's stressful for everybody, but it's not a new thing for me. It's gonna be hard, but I'm pretty confident competing among the best, with the best. And even if I'm the underdog, I can imagine being in the Worlds at the end of the year.
Yeah, I actually didn't know that, to be honest. He just competed in a lot of games. Those weren't the games I knew he'd already competed in, so always learning new things about DocPwn here, and he is currently 1-2 behind against the world champion Pavel, but he did get a point on the board, so to speak, so he is at least feeling a little bit better, as if he went down in that game, he would have been, you know, against Pavel, who would be on match point at that point.
Yes, it's the Jade Druid that picked up a win for him, and he got it done without playing the Yogg, which for me, at least, is a great relief, because I cringe a little bit inside every time that card gets played, and that is the only Yogg that DocPwn is packing in his lineup, and that deck has now bitten the dust through virtue of winning, and he's going to have to win with his 3 other remaining decks, the Dragon Priest, the Mid-Range Shaman, and the Reno Lock, and it's the Reno Lock, the deck he described as being his favorite deck, perhaps not the one he's best at, but the one that he feels comfortable with, and he's going up against Pavel here with what looks like the Reno Mage.
Yeah, it's going to be a cool matchup. This is one that always goes back and forth in terms of who's favored. Obviously, it depends on the builds themselves, because even in this tournament, we are not seeing one straight-up build of either class, to be honest. But what do you make of, you know, like DocPwn's Reno Lock versus Pavel's version of the Reno Mage?
Well, as you can see already by these early draws, Pavel is playing the Burn and Cycle version of Reno Mage. Novice Engineer in there is extra cycle, Loot Hoarder as well, and then that full Ink Master Burn combo available to him with Pyroblast, Ice Lance, and Frostbolt. Probably not in that order if you want to be playing correctly, but still, packing that huge burst damage surprise, the ability to take Jiraxxus as a card out of the equation. But DocPwn's Reno Lock is not, in fact, playing that Jiraxxus, so that's not even a factor.
Yeah, it's definitely interesting in terms of the Jiraxxus pick, but we can actually hear more from DocPwn about this Reno Lock being his favorite deck.
My favorite deck for now is Reno Lock, mostly because I like having a big hand and a lot of possibility to answer your opponent's tactics. Maybe it's not my strongest deck, but it's the one I enjoy the most.
Yeah, maybe not his strongest deck, but as long as you enjoy it. Okay, enjoying the deck kind of can naturally make you better at it anyway, just because you end up playing it more and get more experience regardless. And DocPwn was talking about a large hand, and he definitely has one of those, and a few large minions as well. Mountain Giant, Twilight Drake, absolutely fantastic from him.
And there you can see the America's Winter Playoffs. DocPwn was the big surprise story of that tournament. 7-0 record all the way through Swiss. It looked like he had the chance to just go through the elimination portion undefeated as well, make it the perfect 10-0, but was just pipped at the post by Dr. Chikaninki in the end. But still an incredible run through that tournament. Needs to recapture some of that form now if he's going to overcome Pavel, the world champion.
Yeah, Polymorph sort of been out the way already for DocPwn now. Knows that, you know, okay, that card's just gone. It's one of the benefits of playing against a Reno deck as well, that once they use a resource, it's normally gone for good for the game, unless cards like Babbling Buck come out and mix it up a little bit. But getting the Mountain Giant now down, knows that Polymorph isn't an issue, and he's hoping this to stick to get some huge damage off next turn.
This game is just going to be fireworks. The threat density of the draws from both players here is enormous. DocPwn already played the Drake, Giant coming down now, Giant Ragnaros in hand, Kazakus in hand, huge amounts of burst with Leroy and Soulfire already in hand, now joined by the Faceless as well. But then the same can be said for Pavel. All the key super impactful cards have already been drawn for Pavel as well.
Absolutely crazy. This game is like, we'll give you both all the cards you want.
Yeah.
Go.
Right.
See what happens. I'm a fan of the Faceless here onto the Mountain Giant. You could end up pushing this game out very, very quickly and have no need of trying to work the combo pieces together. There is the Power Overwhelming, of course, in hand, and a Soulfire as well. Just so much damage potential. You could Faceless onto the Mountain Giant, even trade the Emperor off if you don't want to go full crazy and just hit face, and still be in a very strong position.
Yeah, I mean, the Faceless on the 8-8 does look tempting, but with all 3 combo pieces in hand already, landing Emperor on this hand means that entire full combo is unlocked for 8 mana, and you have a Soulfire on top of it. That is a massive amount of surprise burst that Pavel will probably not be accounting. Sure, he's accounting for it in the deck. He won't be accounting for it to become this early on in proceedings.
Yeah, it's kind of funny that I feel like both players are doing the same sort of styles of play with the hands that they've got. They're like, oh, actually, I've got a great potential to close out this game. Do I just do it now and try and rush the game out? But both players have got great hands. And Pavel now dropping Kazakus, starting off with a 1-mana potion, and he does have, of course, the 1 mana this turn to play this potion out.
Yeah, I think he's trying to find a way to deal with the 8-3 Giant here, potentially, without using that Frostbolt, because remember, that Frostbolt is key to his burn combo potential. That's the only activator he has to use to make his Ice Lance deal damage as a combo finisher as well. It's one of the drawbacks that naturally comes with a Reno deck.
Yep, going to follow it up with a 5 potion, so he does have some flexibility with what he can do next turn as well. He is going to be on 7 mana, so, you know, worst case scenario, he can play the potion and the torch as well and deal 3 damage, draw a card. There's one giant gone. And a fireball drawn as well. This game is lit.
The one big thing, we said all the big power cards have been drawn. The one asterisk next to that statement is the fact that neither player's Reno Jackson itself is yet to be drawn. And in this current situation, if that status quo continues, heavily favored towards Pavel.
Yeah, and Pavel's got the potion to deal with this Mountain Giant, or at least have a chance to, depending on what minions are played out. If you can clear up some minions, polymorph the Mountain Giant and draw some more cards. But it's like these guys are just like, let's just play a good, honest game of these Reno decks without Reno. No one's healing to full. We're both just going to go at it and see what happens. And I'm still not quite sure exactly how this game is going to play out because there are so many options available for both players here.
Yeah, preview of the upcoming Ungoro meta, preview of the Year of the Mammoth, Reno finally biting the dust. Will these now soon-to-be Kazakus decks, will they get any more support in the new expansion? Who knows? And if not, will they be good enough? Will Kazakus alone be enough to support these decks? When you see powerful things like this happening, it's hard to imagine that they'll be going away forever. But Pavel, the inspired, perhaps, decision to go for the 1-mana potion there to take care of the Giant. He had a 1-mana Frostbolt in his hand that he could have done the job with, but he wants to preserve it for exactly that card right there. And on top of this damage in hand already, there's 7 on board. The Fireball is 13, the Frostbolt is 16, the Ice Lance is just 20, and the Ping is 21.
He's 1 mana off piling a lot of damage here.
Yes.
and that's lethal, right? If you had 1 more mana. If you played it all, that's absolutely crazy.
If he had 1 more mana, he could fit the Forgotten Torch in as well,
Yeah.
right? Yeah. Unlucky.
Absolutely crazy. Just turn 7, yep, can set up an absolutely huge burst. And now this is the point now where the truly hard decisions are made. How do you manage these resources and still continue and kind of worry about not dying yourself? There's still a Mountain Giant on the board. There's still some minions you have to clean up. And currently DocPwn's board is much, much stronger than Pavel's. And as well, if you just mindlessly go face with some damage and set it up over 2 turns, neither of these players know that they don't have Reno in hand as well. So if you reset that back up to 30, the whole style of the game changes again.
Yeah, this looks like the right play to me, setting up the guaranteed poly on the Giant. And the thing is, Pavel pushing damage here, as long as he's not behind on board when he does it, he doesn't have to be too worried about the situation, because if Reno comes down, Alex, you'll face straight back to 15. That's kind of the scenario that any Freeze Mage style deck, even though this is a Reno Mage, it wants to play along those lines. That's kind of the classic strategy of Freeze Mage versus Reno Lock.
Yep, it's a tough one. We can check out these 2 players. This has been going on throughout the series. This is kind of crazy. Just think,
DocPwn throwing it straight back though. He's doing his best not to be intimidated here. He's giving as good as he's getting.
Yeah, it's absolutely something that's great about 2 players playing each other like so close on the same stage. It's absolutely nuts. These sort of things do come into the game. The Ragnaros is going to clear up the board. DocPwn now is a huge threat that Pavel has to think about, consider, and potentially deal with.
Yeah, reaching the stage now where some of these discounted cards can be used to generate the extra burn damage Pavel will need to get over the line. Looking at that Antonidas and Frost Nova pairing that can be used on 9 mana, typically a classical setup for the Antonidas. Lessened somewhat now by that Rag being in play though, which does not give one solitary damn about your Frost Nova.
It does stop the sheep wearing trousers attacking though. If it survives. So,
spare Flame Strike.
We'll stop that 1 damage. Flame Strike over 2 turns to kill Ragnaros. Slightly inefficient. Slightly.
Does Pavel just have the turns right now just to go pure Freeze Mage style, protect himself behind the Ice Block, and then push out? We can see from the amount of damage in hand on DocPwn's side that the answer to that is a pretty much very resounding no. But does Pavel think that perhaps he has time in that spot? Does he beat an average hand? Does he beat Reno? Does he beat any combination of cards his opponent could have? All of these things will be going through his mind, and it looks like potentially the 2-turn clear on the Rag is actually the road Pavel is going down.
1 mana off lethal again.
Leroy, power overwhelming.
You Hellfire as well, right?
Yep. 1 mana off again.
This game, absolutely nuts. This is the kind of fun we have when Reno's not in the game at all. Looking forward to Ngoro, guys. What do you actually, how do you progress here? Is this, it looks like it's going to be a Kazaka's turn, potentially?
Yeah, I like it.
Are we seeing a 1 mana potion here? It's so weird that obviously, as we can see, there's a lot of damage both players have to think about. But this situation very rarely occurs that there's just this much burst damage without some potential defensive options.
So DocPwn here is going for the 1 mana health buff on his minions. Is that what's happening? Trying to pull that Ragnaros out of range?
Wasn't 100% sure. We'll check out the potions soon they're done. Going for the extremes, a 1 mana and
there it is.
A 10 mana. There's 3 damage, yeah.
Minions +2, which means if it is a 2-turn clear setup on that Rag that Pavel was looking for, he is now kind of stuck because the buff there, 2 1-mana potions, both selected, 1 from each side, have both had massive impacts on this game. From Pavel's side, it's allowed him to preserve this Frostbolt in hand, which activates this Ice Lance and massively increases the amount of damage potential it has. Whereas for DocPwn, it's the board state that you see right now, with that Ragnaros being so much harder to answer than it was before.
Yeah, and the way DocPwn's going to view this is, well, there needs to be Ice Block, Reno, and that's it. Those 2 cards to realistically stop him being able to kill Pavel next turn. Pavel, is he not going to play Ice Block? He knows the list. He knows there's just, at this point, just Leroy PO just does it anyway. He knows the list. The lists are open this tournament. And this
Gonna go ahead and Nova. Remember, Pavel has not seen Emperor in this spot, so he only feels like he has to account for 10 damage. The Faceless has already been used as well, so this is perhaps one of the only combinations of cards, this plus Hellfire or this plus Soulfire, that could end the game. Pavel viewed that as a risk worth taking, and DocPwn leaps through the window of opportunity presented to him by the world champion.
Yeah, absolutely crazy Reno mirrors there. Warlock versus Mage, DocPwn versus Pavel, and he has evened it up. It is 2-2. And DocPwn might be on the verge of a comeback here. He might take it all the way. He is looking quite calm, even in the dire situations we saw him earlier in the match.
Yeah.
He didn't really look too flustered. He's just like, right, okay, this has happened. This is what I need to do, move on. And, he's kept his calm, and we've seen him even throwing some shade at Pavel just as much as he's been doing it to him. So pretty confident overall, I think.
Yeah, and I said earlier, this was first and foremost an opportunity for DocPwn to prove the naysayers wrong. These people saying that he doesn't belong in this group with Pavel, he can't hang with him. Pavel is just going to coast through the lower bracket. DocPwn is doing his level best right now to show that he very much does belong here.
Yeah, and this is only match 3 of the day. We've got plenty more Hearthstone coming up and an absolutely great match coming up next.
Welcome to paradise, the Bahamas. There's more tales to tell. It's Green Sheep! It's Samuel Zhao!
And here are those 2 players getting ready for their next match. No doubt keeping an eye on what's going on in this series as well. We've still got a few more games coming out of this series, but coming up next is going to be Green Sheep versus Samuel Zhao. That's going to be another great one. We saw Green Sheep take an absolutely blitzing win at the back end of yesterday, a quick 4-0 victory. Will he do it the same again? I don't know, but stay tuned to check it out.
There you go. I wonder if the Green Sheep fan club will be out in full force again in the audience, but right now, I'm sure the relatively local North American contingent is rooting for DocPwn to complete this comeback now after being 0-2, coming back to a 2-2 scoreline against the European representative, the world champion, the Russian comeback kid himself, Pavel. If anyone knows what it takes to be in the spot DocPwn was and come back from behind, it is that man right there, Pavel.
Yeah, an absolute glory for DocPwn if he can get this win here. One, it just advances him through the stage, right? These are all elimination matches we're going to be playing out today, so he advances through the Winter Championships and continues to play, but also being one of the very few players to take a match off the current world champion is a huge deal in itself. We are going to be moving on. This is game 5, and it's going to be the Priest from DocPwn against Pavel's Warlock coming right up. And Pavel has the Doomsayer to keep, which is pretty huge.
It is. DocPwn does have the opportunity to hold on to a Shadow Word Pain here. It's not something that is an auto-keep, even though the Doomsayer is one of the things that crushes you, because if you keep a Pain in your mulligan, that reduces the amount of power, the amount of stats that you can unload quickly in the world where your opponent doesn't have the Doomsayer. That means you can just fail to push through quickly enough, and Pavel can just hit their AoE.
Yeah, it's funny, isn't it? It's like, oh, I'll keep the Pain in case of the Doomsayer to stop me curving out. If I keep the Pain, it might stop me curving out.
Right.
So it's kind of like, how do you even make that decision? DocPwn's decided he is keeping the Pain and has a relatively early curve as well. So you actually choose to coin out the double 1-drops. Not too common a play. You'd normally want to coin out the Talon Priest on turn 2, but it would leave the Shadow Word Pain open for him to answer this Doomsayer.
Yeah, if you're keeping the Shadow Word Pain here, then the way this lines up, you want to force your opponent to play the Doomsayer so that you can play your Shadow Word Pain as the 2-drop. That's how you, as the aggressor, want to dictate the game going. But now, because DocPwn has chosen not to do that, now he's in this slightly awkward spot where Doomsayer can come down and potentially interrupt his curve as opposed to playing into the curve he decided to keep.
Yeah, really interesting choice. And then the way it's worked out now is Pavel, because of only one Twilight Whelp, he's not bothered to play the Doomsayer this turn. So it's all looking a bit wonky in my book. But I'm actually surprised there wasn't a coin Talon Priest, because then that opens up the potential of the Cleric and the heal for turn 3 as well. And now this... like you said, this is just going to be a little bit interrupted here. It's kind of awkward.
I mean, DocPwn, you kept this card for this very reason. If you're not Shadow Word Paining this Doomsayer, what is that Shadow Word Pain doing in your opening hand?
Just chilling.
All right, fair enough.
Taking in the sides.
There we go.
Yeah.
All right.
It's going to be the Shadow Word Pain, and DocPwn still has some good follow-ups. If you look at the rest of his curve, next turn he can coin out the... he can't coin out the Operative, actually. There's no other dragons at the moment, but he does have the Argus on curve if required to buff these little minions back up a little bit more and start pressuring even more. And Pavel just going for the life tap, trying to get into these resources to help deal with this board. Although the board looks small now, it's always one that can just snowball very heavily, because even though the attack values aren't high, they are getting attacks in, and Pavel is live tapping, which really accelerates the process.
Yeah, this game may look very similar to the game we saw in reverse earlier.
Look at those eyes!
That was a great shot. It may look very similar to the game we saw in reverse earlier, where Pavel was on Dragon Priest and just managed to run DocPwn over. There is one key difference, though, and that is the fact that Power Overwhelming and Shadow Flame are in hand in combination for Pavel. That was a luxury that was not afforded to DocPwn. So if he can stabilize here, if he can reach high enough mana to drop a minion, Power Overwhelming, and Shadow Flame in the same turn, then he'll be able to stabilize this board very quickly.
Yeah, and this board itself now, you know, the Imp Gang Boss could help achieve that if he's feeling like he's got enough time, just because of if an Imp lives, you can create a 5 damage Shadow Flame the next turn. It looks like that's what Pavel's going for, just going to make this as awkward as possible for DocPwn. Probably wish he could draw into a second Shadow Word Pain now. That would just be ludicrous at this point. Operative still not live, which is definitely frustrating for DocPwn, no doubt.
Yeah, Bookworm as well, actually a card that DocPwn has chosen to leave out of his deck entirely to make room for some extra mid-game tools. Defender of Argus, Twilight Drake, 2 Blackwing Technicians he has in here. So Bookworm here with that coin would be another crushing option to be able to take care of that Imp Gang boss, but DocPwn has chosen to leave that card out.
Yeah, and this is that's just for the or not guaranteed, but much more likely curve. You know, when you play even more 3-drops as well, it's like, yes, I am just going to mulligan hard for the opening and curve every single game. DocPwn going to take this slow, use 2 of the mana on healing up this Cleric and drawing additional card. Brand going to be pretty nice if this Bookworm, sorry, made me think about Bookworm now. If this this Operative actually gets another dragon in hand to be able to get some double value from that. Talon Priest is going to come down by looks things onto the Cleric and have a very high health total, but as we said, this leaving any minion on the board opened up a huge Shadow Flame turn for Pavel. I imagine there isn't too much to think about this turn.
No, Power Overwhelming and Shadow Flame looks likely can do it just with the Imp attacking into the 2-7 first, then Shadow Flaming the full board away. That leaves him with a small board lead now that he can use to build from. If the follow-up from DocPwn here is just big drops, if it's Draconid Pass or if it's Twilight Guardian Pass, something like that, then Siphon Soul can start to gain tempo as well. If there's not a big board development, then cards like Emperor and Sylvanas can just start to dominate in that fashion. So as I mentioned, looked like a similar opening to the last Dragon Priest versus Reno lot we saw, but that Power Overwhelming and Shadow Flame made all the difference.
Yeah, and DocPwn here had the opportunity to at least play Brand this turn as well. Not really getting that much extra value, you get +1 attack, which means, yeah, you kill the Sun Fury if it trades, but more importantly, just gets you a minion on the board, but with the chance just ever increasing to draw a dragon every single turn as we go deeper into this game. DocPwn saving the Brand for the Brand into Operative for potentially game-winning value at this point.
Just a 2-4 and go from DocPwn. That's all he was able to develop for 6 mana. So what kind of read can Pavel get on the hand based on that? I think you can definitely put Draconid Operative with no dragon as something that your opponent is on. Aside from that, you're thinking tech cards. As I said, there's lots of them in the deck. There are those Blackwing Technicians, which would have been played unless there's another an issue with dragons in hand to be able to deal with it. There's one Holy Nova, which could be an option to be in hand as well. Dragonfire Potion, the card that's just drawn. Shadow Earth Pains and Shadow Earth Deaths. That's what Pavel is going to be viewing as in his opponent's hand. So when he plays out this Emperor here, Pavel is almost certain this is getting dealt with based on his likely read on his opponent's hand, but it's just too powerful in comparison to his other plays to do anything else.
Yeah, not too much of a surprise if we see the powered shield come down. Like, DocPwn just needs a dragon. There we go. We can see as the Operative is glowing yellow, then it means that dragon is drawn. Twilight Drake, not too bad considering DocPwn at this moment in time does have a relatively large hand size.
Yeah, he's getting there. He can actually use Brand to increase his hand size in the future, which can be very difficult to do for a lot of decks that don't have powerful card draw options. But first and foremost, this Emperor needs to be dealt with. And DocPwn says, this is one of my best opportunities to use Dragonfire Potion, which is a little curious with 2 deaths in hand, but the ultimate argument also says that Shadow Earth Death didn't have a ton of development behind it. He would have had to use the coin as well to drop the Twilight Drake behind it, I believe. So, yeah, not a great spot to interrupt his tempo too much with the Shadow Earth Death.
Yeah, I think we're getting close to needing a deck list check to see if Pavel's actually running Reno in his Reno list, as we don't see him draw it too often in this series at least. I like the way you actually looked at the list then, Sol. That was obviously off camera, but that was pretty funny. Twilight Guardian being drawn now. DocPwn is getting to thicker things with the dragon. I do... Ooh. Oh, wow.
Synchronicity.
Just call me Anduin. Actually, please don't.
No.
I was going to say, Brand Operative feels great to do, as we've mentioned multiple times. Multiple discovers is absolutely huge. But just Operative into the Shadow of Death seems pretty reasonable. Brand can still get a lot of value later on with the Twilight Drake the turn after.
Yeah, it is a big board swing. Drake going to be coming down here, though, alongside the Shadow of Death. So he views it the other way. He says 4/7's big enough, and then I want to save the Brand Operative because that can help me pick up burst damage. That can help me solve the problem that Dragon Priest and any kind of mid-range board development Priest, you know, going all the way back to Undertaker Priest that was being played as a counter to Undertaker Hunter back in the day. Great at curving out, beat you up very quickly if it got a fast start, couldn't close games, lack of burst damage. So Operative in this matchup is a key tool to steal some burst damage from a deck that does play a ton of it in Reno Lock.
Yeah, could always put the old Mind Blasts in the Priest if you're struggling with that kind of thing. Might not make your draws very consistent, but still looks like Dirty Rat is going to come down from Pavel. And if he hits this Operative...
Oh boy.
Wow. Well, that just removed a hell of a lot of value from DocPwn's hand. Now there is just the Twilight Guardians, the Soul Dragon, which is not very intimidating by itself and not a dragon draw. This is a horrible outcome for DocPwn here. There is just not a lot he can do this turn at all. Develop a 2/6, pass.
DocPwn had such a concise plan. It was the Twilight Drake coming down for a bit of board pressure, follow it up with that big grab for 2 potential sources of damage from Bran Operative, and just in one fell swoop, that gets completely torn apart by the most unclean of rodents.
Yeah, the dirtiest of rats. Ugh. This is just... This looks like a simple turn because there's just not much to do, but it's a tough turn to make yourself play out and to actually click on those cards. You know, can you afford to wait a turn? I don't know. It looks like DocPwn thinks he can. He's on full health, but the longer the game goes on, the more value Pavel's going to draw into. He's eventually going to dig out that Reno and also just move forward with even big Kazaka's potions and just grip the board. Dragonfire potion is gone as well, so there's just very little he can really do about this.
Sylvanas is perhaps a little bit surprising to me in this spot. It is a great answer. He has seen 1 Shadow Word Death being used, so maybe feels like it's safe on the board, but it's not like there's no Ragnaros in DocPwn's deck, which means that's the big preemptive Sylvanas play, where you play it expecting a Rag to come down, but this Netherspite Historian can potentially solve a lot of issues now for DocPwn.
Probably the best draw he had available to him because he can chain dragons now. No legendary dragons, so nothing too crazy going to drop onto the board, but they'd get a second Twilight Guardian and the Crusher as well, which at this moment in time would be a 9-9 on the board as Pavel's health is 15 or below. So he's going to probably lose the brand this turn from the Bruiser, but it was definitely worth it to get that Dragon Synergy cooking again.
Now finally some of the big threats are coming into hand for Pavel. Just now picking up the Drake and Giant. There's still a ton of value left in his deck, just having drawn these 2 cards just now. Jiraxxus in there as well, of course. But 4-6 and 4-5 now on the board, and does have the Shadow Bolt for a clean clear on the Bran. But he's going to have to find answers to several more waves of minions coming at this point. Draconid Crusher not the least of it, even though it's answered immediately by the Siphon Soul.
Yeah, it's a kind of a awkward position here. It always feels really bad as the Dragon Priest when you lose the board, your opponent grabs it, and then you have to start generating minions, because even though you play big dudes, you're always behind. And I feel like once you fall behind after seeing cards like Twisted Nether come out, you're in such a tough spot. And I feel like if DocPwn could have got an Onyxia, Ysera potentially, you know, one of the really big dragons out from one of those Netherspite procs, you can say, okay, this is just 1 minion, but you know, it allows my opponent to either answer it or I can really jump ahead in the game again.
Yeah, I mean, it depends how you look at it. There's an argument to say that this Crusher being played here, this eats the Siphon Soul. Any big minion that he dropped can potentially eat the same Siphon Soul. So the other way to look at it is to say he'd look for a dragon that had some immediate impact on the game. So Ysera can potentially get him some burst damage in the form of Awakens or Nightmare. Onyxia would at least fill the board with 1/1s and mitigate the threat of that Siphon Soul taking care of the full body.
Sure.
So, you know, the fact that the dragon he got was just a big dumb idiot, that's the problem that he ran into. He needed a dragon with an immediate impact.
I don't think Crusher's dumb. It's very mean of you to say so. Maybe
Not
feelings.
Not the first mean thing I've said. It probably won't be the last.
Definitely, and that's more like it. It's a tough choice, though. Maybe you're not seeing Reno yet. Do you ever consider Alex Straza at this point? If Reno comes out, you can Alex Straza. It is an 8/8, so big enough dragon there to present a huge problem as the minion itself. But to negate the Reno effectively is actually a big deal.
It is a big deal, but he's also going to run out of pressure fairly soon, which means he wants something he can commit to the board sooner rather than later. So just picking a card here just to hold in your hand and wait for maybe an eventuality that comes to fruition probably isn't the line I'd be looking at. I'm eyeing the Malagos in this situation, with Siphon Soul having already been used. Multiple situations where Pavel could have had a chance to use the Blast Crystal Potion, and in fact, Blast Crystal Potion, not a card in Pavel's deck, remember, he's replaced it with that Spellbreaker that we have already seen.
Yeah. I wondered then as well, if, obviously DocPwn did go for the Malagos, but if Bookworm was ever a consideration, because you could play it that turn, clear off the 3/5, and the 4/1 and the 4/3 on the board would both die to it. So you'd effectively have one minion that clears 3 straight off the board. You know, over the course of a turn or so, but still could be quite valuable. But when you're staring down and Malagos is the other choice, I'm not arguing with DocPwn too much here.
No, I advocated for Malagos at the time. I definitely agree this is the right play. There's also the upside combo potential that we didn't mention. I believe the Holy Nova is still in deck for DocPwn, but just the 412 in a world where Siphon has already been used and Blast Crystal Potion is not a tech choice Pavel is running. It's Spellbreaker instead. Again, this is something that we spoke to Pavel about a lot this week. He has stuck to his guns in terms of the decks that he likes to play and the tech choices that he likes to play. Amongst the other very best players in the world, there's almost unanimous agreement on at least 28, 29 cards out of these decks as to how you build the best list. Pavel says, no, I have my own ideas. Spellbreaker over Blast Crystal Potion, very rare, but something that might have a big impact in this game, possibly to Pavel's detriment.
Yeah, I completely agree. It's something that, like, as you said, we both asked him about, and very interesting answer. He's just like, just play the stuff that works or has already worked for me.
Yeah.
So it's hard to argue with that until it doesn't work. And it's like, okay, well, I mean, it's going to have to change soon because Standard changed up a few of the decks just a little bit. And something I'm picking up on as well here is this Faceless Manipulator could be a pretty big deal because Malagos is a card.
Yep.
There's Hellfire and Coil already hand. He can play Faceless Manipulator, Hellfire the board, and Coil for ludicrous amounts of damage, which will just be insane, and I think more than makes up for not being able to combo with Leroy.
Yeah, I'm not quite so sure about the Hellfire because
we just Hellfire. We just Hellfire. It's loads of damage. Who doesn't want to see that?
Bear in mind that's 8 damage to Pavel's own face in that situation.
Exactly.
Yeah, I'm not sure how pretty that is in the long run, but otherwise, no great answer to this Malagos, because just the Faceless and the Coil, he would need the Giant attack to connect with the Malagos as well to take care of it, and there's the Twilight Guardian protecting the way.
Yeah, he could just Faceless and then Coil the Twilight Guardian and just go face. His opponent's only got 2 cards. If Pavel's tracking as he should be, one of those he knows is the coin. So what one card is completely going to blow him out here with his own Malagos on the board, right? It requires a big deal to answer this, and we are going to see it. Mali versus Mali action.
Yeah, I love this. I imagine this Giant attack is going to go face in this spot. Oh, is he going to trade?
Oh, he's going to just double trade out.
He's going to trade with the Leroy. This is interesting. The Mali is a big deal, but the Holy Nova, even in that spot, only represents...
Oh, it was drawn.
7 damage.
Look at Pavel's... just looked over the phone, smiling. So great.
He knows.
Oh.
Pavel now knows what the far right card in DocPwn's hand is 100%. We've been talking about the looks back and forwards and the reactions between these two players for this whole series. Is that the moment where Pavel finally got the best of it?
It might well be. As we were talking about the Holy Nova a few turns earlier, of course, got drawn the turn, and it's not as if, Pavel leaves at the Malagos. Sure, just hit him for 8 and threaten your own kind of lethal possibilities to turn after. Pavel chose to trade and got quite heavily rewarded for it, as that would have been a lot of damage coming out from the Nova there. That would have just been ludicrous. Plus the hit from the Malagos.
Quickly.
Nausea Cleric going to come down here. DocPwn just doesn't see an out. He's going to try and cycle. He's going to have to cycle off his opponent's minions if he wants to do that.
Not got much time to do that, though.
And this is always a sign of abject desperation for the Dragon Priest player when it's Cleric to cycle off the opposing minion. And again, the Dragons have just not lined up for DocPwn this game. He does have a lot of cards like this that do need it. And finally, Pavel hits one of the massive power cards, the Kazakus and Reno power trio. Picks up the Kazakus at last after just having to scrap pretty much with subpar cards. He's played this game for this long with no benefit of putting singletons in his deck throughout because he hasn't used the Kazakus or Reno yet.
I do like the Draxes this turn, though.
Sure, this is fine.
After that draw, one card is the coin still. Your opponent pretty much has nothing in hand that's going to threaten Drax's kind of
There's
health.
no pretty much about it. This hand is coin Holy Nova. We know that based on the reactions. Pavel knows the contents of this hand 100%.
So you get Draxus down. Next turn, you drop the Kazakus and start stacking up armor and more value, and that will probably spell doom for DocPwn in this game. I do not know what he could even draw into that would help him get out of this situation. The only card I can even think of at this point would be along the lines of a Deathwing, and that could be answered by Kazakus anyway, turning it into a little sheep.
Yeah, not happening. No Deathwing in the deck. Both Nether Spites used as well, I believe. So, not even an out of that kind. Twilight Whelp now being picked up. He just had to play on the previous turn his second Blackwing Technician without activating the stat buff. Now he draws the smallest dragon, the dragon that you often hold on to be an activator. This is what I'm saying when I say that the dragon activations have just not lined up whatsoever for DocPwn this game.
No, he's gone full Season 2 Khaleesi. Where are my dragons?
Gran Kazakus time. Kazakus damage effects amplified by Malagos is something
Yeah,
that
go
I
for the one
confess
manas.
I have never ever seen before. That is 7 damage AoE for 1 mana right now. Is he going to go again?
I mean, why not?
Try
It's
and pick up more damage?
pretty much a 10 mana at this point.
Yeah, okay.
You have
All right.
bested me. Oh,
Good
look.
call.
And DocPwn just looks over at Pavel, gives him a smile and a nod. He's like, okay, that was a ridiculous game of Hearthstone. And Pavel did come out on top. Now going to match point, he's 3-2 up versus DocPwn off the back of some faceless Malagos shenanigans. Whew. What a game.
Yeah, what a game, what a series. You know, 2 great players involved. You know, DocPwn, questions have been asked about him, but he is answering them one by one right now. He's showing that he can hang in the mind games with Pavel. He's tightening up his play piece by piece and starting to pull it all together. But still, Pavel is showing just enough to give him the edge here.
Yeah, and just so you're aware, Pavel has just stepped away to just nip to the bathroom. Just needs a little break after that series. They're both going to go together, apparently. They're just going to...
Together? Oh, wow, really?
Maybe not directly together, but we can check out the reactions and how those players have been interacting outside of the game throughout this series, because it has been absolutely crazy. And this is the moment from the Holy Nova draw that really blew up here.
There it is,
there we go.
So the Holy Nova gets drawn. DocPwn reacts, and that is a knowing smile. If you looked up knowing smile in the dictionary, there would be a picture of Pavel's beautiful face right there. He had the perfect hand read for the rest of the game from that point onwards, and Pavel was able to capitalize on that, knowing exactly what his opponent's options were, and the choice to trade in the end chose to be very, very much justified.
Yeah, and we've been talking a lot throughout, the past few days about the way the stage is, how close the players are sat next to each other. This series specifically is displaying that a lot, as Pavel likes to do. But how important do you think it is to actually, how much do you think it's actually affecting players in terms of, looks like those? Because DocPwn there seemed to be like, oh, okay, like taking it quite lighthearted. But I imagine it can be quite grim as well to have someone who's beating you be staring at you at the same time.
Yeah, it's hard to say. I don't want to read too much into it than is there. You have to ask the players themselves to get the definitive answer. What it does add is a great sense of theatre to the occasion. It's that extra level of entertainment for the people watching. It's that extra level of drama. And, Pavel is showing that he's adding these things to his game. Maybe it doesn't give him an advantage as we're making out, but if he's comfortable doing it, on the offhand that he does come up against an opponent that he's able to intimidate, then why not?
Yeah, we're going to find out a little bit more about Pavel and his break-taking shenanigans in Well Met.
Well met.
Hi, my name is Pavel. I'm from Russia and I'm 19 years old. My favorite player is me. For a play tournament, I try not drink too much water, so I will not need go to the toilet in the match. The best thing about playing in HTC is winning.
Not advice you should listen to. Keep hydrated, whether it makes you go to the toilet often or not.
It just didn't work anyway. He's clearly gone to the bathroom. Try
not making this
harder,
up.
Pavel.
Don't tell him to drink less water.
No,
that
that's
is
probably
not good.
not right.
Don't listen to this guy. It's not good advice. But yeah, both players just stepping away for just a minute. This has been a crazy series overall, especially that last game. And again, This is an elimination match. All of the matches today, the losers are out. The winners continue to fight on at the later part of the stage.
Everything
and we can
on
check
the
out
line.
Stanu Dashi in the crowd.
For these two players, there is a man who's got the majority of his work done already, but he still has one more game to win. 2-0 record got him out of the double elim groups, but the European representative has one more game to win to book his spot at the World Championships.
Woo! And we're going to be checking, we're going to be checking in with Dr. J a little bit later, as he's going to be joining us on the analyst desk. I'm looking forward to that.
As he proudly flaunts his 0-2 record in this tournament to the camera, but he'll be back. Great character, guy that, looks at the game and from our brief interactions with him, looks at life in the right way, just wanting to have fun. Thankful to be here, and I'm sure we'll see a ton more of him in the future.
Yeah, and on the analyst desk a little bit later with us is going to be a lot of fun. I don't quite know what he's going to do, but we'll find something for him. He'll no doubt offer some great insight. And it's just been an amazing week, and moving on to the weekend here at the Bahamas. We've been having a lot of fun with the players early on. We got a few days to actually hang out with them and enjoy the scenes before we truly kicked off this tournament. And now it's all business. But as we said earlier, these guys, the elimination matches, but if you get knocked out, the beach is literally outside this door.
Yeah, it's not a terrible consolation prize, but it's a consolation prize nonetheless. These guys are professionals. They are driven competitors, and if you gave any of them the choice between going to the World Championships, wherever that ends up being, or hanging out here in the Bahamas, they would take about 0.2 seconds to make that decision. They are going to Worlds every single time.
Yeah, and both players are back now after just needing to quickly step away for a break, and they're going to be continuing this series. Pavel is on match point, being up 3-2 versus DocPwn on the back of that faceless Malygos. What a amazing game. I really, really enjoyed the last one. I have no doubt the rest of the games in this series are going to be just as good as we get right into it. Pavel on the Reno Mage, DocPwn again on this Dragon Priest, one of the decks or archetypes that has not been performing too well in this tournament, and another player who is struggling to just grab a win with this in this series.
Yeah, indeed. He does have, on paper, in theory, a good matchup here against the Reno Mage, but this is where subcategories of archetypes and particular tech decisions can start to affect win rates wildly. We saw this matchup play out, I think it was in Tare's series, where the Dragon Priest was up against the slow-paced value Reno Mage, and Dragon Priest just slowly but surely took over that game step by step with value after value while dropping stats on the board. Pavel, however, is not on that game plan. His game plan is to draw through his deck, to get a bunch of burn together in his hand, and then to nuke his opponent in a single turn. And when that combo strategy is your win condition, you're not that interested in value, and that gives him a window to win this game in a way that was not available to the value-based Reno Mage decks we saw before.
Yeah, I think both players taking slightly more extreme versions of the list as well, because even DocPwn is taking more of the I will drop a minion every single turn. These Blackwing techs going to really help out with the early curve, and the Twilight Drakes potentially having the health to be outside of the easy kill ranges that Mage has regardless.
Yep, and I think he's just trying to maximize as much health on his Twilight Drake as he can here for that very reason. He could have coined the Drake out. He's instead choosing just to follow the curve. 3-5 here, now being followed up by, what is this? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 4, 8 coming down onto the board. Well out of range of even Fireball Ping or a spell damage Fireball.
Yeah, and if we can see, the Polymorph is available for Pavel if he just wants to remove this Twilight Drake off the board. But the problem with that is that there are plenty more big dudes left for DocPwn. We can see that this game, at least, he does have enough dragons in his hand on curve to be able to play that Operative out. And Operative pretty much demands a Fireball. If the Fireball doesn't come, then you are in some serious trouble in general as the Mage.
Yeah, Polymorph comes out to answer that first big threat, but as you said, the threats will keep on coming. Draconid Operative can come down. It's a threat in itself, and it gives you the ability to pick up another threat from your opponent's deck. Netherspite Historian can hit big gas too as well for DocPwn. So has Pavel got enough time even? This has been a very, very aggressive curve from DocPwn, and we talked in the previous game about how he struggled to get his dragons and dragon activators to line up together. But you made the point that he was putting these extra 3-drops in his deck so he could get a more consistent curve early on. And now we're starting to see that come to fruition in this game against the Tempo Mage. Reno Mage, sorry.
Yeah. Reno Mage with a lack of tempo at the moment.
Yeah.
Look at these options. God, Operative's a pretty good card. Roaring Torch as well, which is kind of great as an option. Kazakus and Antonidas this early in the game. I don't think of the picks. Personally, I just like Torch. You're already building a powerful board to start punching the Mage in the face. And then Torch is just the unexpected burst damage that Pavel, frankly, can't realistically play around. Has gone for the Antonidas, though.
I think I would have lent towards Torch as well, but it's kind of just a diverging playstyle thing. It's not necessarily just black and white, right or wrong situation. You know, it kind of just lays out your stance for the rest of the game where you say, okay, I'm going to be aggressive, I'm going to push, I'm going to pop the block if it's there, and then I'm going to finish with damage from hand. Yeah, that's an availability to you. But DocPwn here is just setting out for a more long-term value-based strategy, which can, if he slows down enough, give Pavel a window to get his own burst damage win condition through, but we have seen, in general, how effective Dragon Priest is at doing this kind of thing to Reno Mage.
Yeah, we are moving up to the potential power turns from Pavel, though. We've seen this, I think, in every multiple series that we've cast, at least. The Inkmaster Solia into the Firelands portal, although just not lining quite up too nicely without the spell damage to the Operative. It's simply just a powerful play onto the board. Remove a minion off the board, play a 5/5 plus an additional 5-drop, which can be pretty impressive in itself.
Despite Historian going to be the drop here for DocPwn, and he will be looking just for big gas, and that is actually a tougher call than I think DocPwn made it look there. Draconid Operative, of course, always an amazing pick, but Onyxia, just as a massive late game threat, was very, very strong there as well. But look at this board state now. The Solia swing turn, usually so powerful, is just not even anywhere near good enough against this board state.
No, it's kind of crazy. Pavel's just going to have to go for the 10-mana potion into Polymorph All. And although it looks like it's a few turns away, there is a card called Inkmaster Solia that allows you to play a spell for free regardless of its costs. The transform all minions into 1/1 sheep in brackets wearing trousers is an option if he really wants to. The deal 6 to all is also an option as well, but I normally would be afraid of more health buffs coming out from the priest that might completely make that choice well, not completely, but to a large extent moot if some of the big guys survive.
So the problem I see here is, if you're taking Mystic Wall, essentially Pavel is looking to line this up on the very next turn by playing it with Solia and bypassing the 10 mana cost, which means this turn he pretty much just has to play Ice Block just to survive that one extra turn, and then transforming the minions into sheep is not really going to be good enough even if you've got the armor to go alongside it. So by taking the damage instead, he would have been able to nuke this board for 6 and then use the Arcane Blast to potentially finish off the Draconid Operative, clearing the board. As you mentioned, that is very, very scary against health buffs because that can throw a real spanner in the works. Pavel, though, is trying to survive this turn without playing the Ice Block, giving the opportunity for lethal for DocPwn this turn, but there is only 9 damage, 10 damage in play, meaning that it's that fabled Bran Blackwing Corruptor combination that would be what is needed to kill him.
Or a Roaring Torch.
Or a Roaring Torch.
Which he could have cast with the coin. Oh, hindsight.
Wait, what's the coin got to do
Oh,
with it?
yeah, okay. He can actually Operative into it as well.
He can do it right now, yeah.
Yeah, that's what I was counting. I was counting both things at the same time.
Okay.
I shouldn't multitask. It's clearly not a strength.
I was going to say, if he had a Roaring Torch in his hand, it only
Roaring
costs
Torch
3, not
choice
8.
earlier on
Right.
would have just done this game, done dusted, but can still go for it with the Operative. Looks like DocPwn just wants to say, okay, well, I'm going to Antonidas and play stuff, get 2 fireballs guaranteed in hand for next turn and set this up.
Throwing his Antonidas potentially onto the board here, exposed into that potion that was taken. But remember, if that potion is going to be a significant threat against this board, then it would have to be the 10-mana potion, meaning that DocPwn would have to expect Solia and a 10-mana potion that takes care of this.
Yeah, and there's going to be 3 sheep, and now there is 12. 1 damage off lethal this turn at this point with the 2 fireballs.
Fireball for 12. The 3 sheep coming in for 3 additional damage, making 15 indeed. And Pavel might just be turning the corner here. Reno Jackson now to restabilize on the following turns. More cycle in hand with the Novice and Blood Mage Thanos to get towards that Alex Straza that he needs. And then just a ton of damage sitting in hand as well.
Yeah, this is a real tough one. He can actually Dragonfire Potion and trade the sheep in. Not in that order, of course, this turn just to clear the board. But that only means that he can develop a Wimmerst Agent, so nothing too threatening. He kind of needs to develop a minion onto the board that isn't threatening enough for Pavel to feel that he needs to Reno, but the odds of Pavel not Renoing or Ice Blocking next turn are probably very, very, very slim at this point.
Quickly.
Rope time, DocPwn, so it's time to act. Not too much time left to consider your options now from this Draconid Operative. There is Antonidas again. We can just go back to the well one more time. That is the 2nd time in as many days that we have seen 2 Archmage Antonidas discovered in the same game by a Dragon Priest player.
No Dragon Priests.
Yeah.
You crazy kids.
Play with your own damn cards, Anduin.
Or Tyrandy.
Oh, Tyrandy, yeah.
Don't exclude people, please.
That's
don't.
fair.
Okay, so the 8-8 not going to be able to do too much. Can trade off into the Operative if Pavel chooses to use some removal tools on this Wimmerst Agent. Going for the buck, though.
Ooh. Ice Lance is a big pickup. That adds to the burn potential of the deck significantly, but he does still need to potentially find some board answers here, especially with a 2nd Antonidas in his future.
Yeah, it looks like Pavel's just going to hold on to all the burn possible and try and cycle into some more damage here. Bran available, not going to be doing too much yet. And DocPwn's just like, okay, how many more spells can I cast with Antonidas this turn? And you can actually get away with 1 if he wants to cast a Shadowword Pain, but they'll be casting Shadowword Pain on a 1-1 just to get an additional Fireball. But that's 18 damage from hand over the course of multiple turns for DocPwn if he does.
Yeah, you can see Pavel has cycled a little, but on the card counters on the right-hand side of the screen, still only just under half of his deck remaining, which means his chances of hitting a big Alex Straza or Emperor Thaurissan or any of these tools into big game-ending damage is actually very, very slim. Does not have too many turns to play with here. His block will go down very soon, if not this turn, and then Reno Jackson will only buy him so much time against all this aggression that DocPwn has available to him.
This is going to be very, very tough for Pavel here, I think.
Fireball number 1 goes through. That is a clean pop of the ice block. But is DocPwn now going to choose to expend resources to deal with this board state, which will help him beat the likelihood of the Reno Jackson coming out here? Pavel has played like a man who has had Reno in this situation. It seems like he has been playing to that Reno out. So no surprise that DocPwn is respecting it very heavily here.
Yeah, and I think DocPwn is fine playing the Fireballs out there just to keep everything clean. He has a 2nd Antonidas, so he can develop more Fireballs later on. The Frost Nova is a very nice pickup for Pavel. He can actually go Reno into Nova and kind of buy himself a turn if he really wants, because one of the issues is if you play Reno and don't really deal with the board too well, then you just take so much damage on the backswing that the impact of that Reno is lessened to such a large extent.
Right.
Especially when you know your opponent's got so many resources still in hand. This is not a play Reno and win matchup at all.
Yeah, the Reno Frost Nova is a little bit dangerous in terms of how it'll end up sacrificing into the Draconid Operative. Also, the Cleric on board is a big deal as well. So, does check his draw first with the Blood Mage. There's also the opportunity to try and trade that into the Draconid Operative and hope that DocPwn doesn't heal it back up, because now with the Blood Mage not available, the Firelands portal does not line up too well against the Operative, and that's definitely something that can be a favorable exchange for the Mage players in this matchup. For Pavel, if he can get a spell-damaged Firelands onto an Operative, just going to take care of it now, though.
Yeah, just saying that I don't even want to give you the option at this point. I will save my Firelands portal to maybe get a cleaner trade. 2nd Corruptor being picked up for DocPwn here. He's got a lot of additional burst damage himself. He can actually just drop the 2 Corruptors to kill off the Reno. A little bit open to Flame Strike. But still, not too bad in terms of development. You do want to get rid of this Reno, otherwise it's going to just hit so many really strong trades here.
Yeah, anytime you can answer a 4/6 minion this efficiently with Priest, it's something that's right in the forefront of your mind. But DocPwn will also be considering the fact he hasn't seen any of the major AoE effects yet, and just considering his exposure against all of those incrementally one by one. But with the amount of value that he preserves in hand against an AoE like that, I don't think it's a big deal to make the push here.
Yeah, he can just, it means Antonidas is just getting progressively more safe. Pavel isn't exactly planning to deal with a second Antonidas this game for his opponent. And, you know, even just as your Drake, Twilight Guardian, the value of the Talon Priest, he's got a lot of options still, and there's a second Pain. So even if he didn't have the first one available, definitely got the second one to deal with this Thunder Bluff. And thankfully, Mage can't randomly summon totems.
No, it's actually a bit unfortunate for Pavel that he ended up with a sub-4 attack minion here because, you know, fairly likely to get something with 4 or above off of the Firelands portal, and not only is the 3/6 counterable by Shadow Word Pain, it's also the activator that DocPwn has been waiting for to get that Antonidas on board while casting the cheap spell.
Yeah, and let's think about the way this game is and what's left in Pavel's deck here. If Pavel just Fireball Ping, right, you know, just straightforward kill this second Antonidas.
Yeah.
How does he actually win?
It's a good question.
Kazakus is gone.
Yes.
Well, pretty much all his burn has gone.
Yes.
I believe there's a Frostbolt still left.
There is a natural copy of Pyroblast in his deck. Yes.
So there's that and the Alexstrasza.
And this Ice Lance in his hand, remember, is not his Ice Lance. That was from a random effect as well. So there is a second Ice Lance in the deck
so that,
as well.
there's the answer. That's how Pavel wins. But that is one route, a single, very straightforward route. There are no options. There are no turn-offs. That is the only way Pavel's going to be able to dig himself out of this situation. And DocPwn is just going to keep piling on the pressure. Pavel does have Blizzard and Frost Nova to buy turns, as Priest is just such a heavy minion-based damage deck at the moment. Okay.
The draw here is Burgly Bully, and remember, we've seen DocPwn playing Pavel's Antonidas on multiple occasions, but that is still available to Pavel as well, so he can get all the extra damage that he needs, especially if he's able to pick up some spells, some coins from this Burgly Bully, and that seems actually fairly likely. One of the only ways Priest removes from hand without casting a spell is Blackwing Corruptor. Those were both used on the same turn just a little while ago, meaning with these 2 board freezes that Pavel has available to him, he's actually threatening to get a lot of value in terms of coins from this Burgly Bully.
Yeah, both players on 9 cards apiece at this point still left in the deck, so everything is even in terms of speed in which they have drawn through the deck. And, you know, I feel like this is such a close and potentially last game of this series. If Pavel can go straight into, you know, Antonidas, into Alexstrasza, into Pyro, then those 3 cards can actually line up maybe well enough to win the game, but they have to line up almost perfectly at this point.
Yeah, there's a serious question mark step that you're missing there somewhere along the line, because he doesn't have those turns available to him while leaving this board around. There has to be some sort of solution to resolve this board state before he can start that chain of events happening, because his Ice Block is already gone, his Reno is already gone. This Flame Strike alone is not good enough to clear the board. Even Flame Strike plus Volcanic Potion paired together is not good enough to clear this board. So where does he find the turns? Even if he were to draw those 3 perfect cards, where does he find the turns to make that happen?
Yeah, I think his overall plan is going to be with Blizzard this turn, into potentially Flame Strike, Volc Potion next turn, and hope DocPwn can't continue to just play onto the board here and just keep adding up these high-pressure minions. I think it's just the only chance he's got at this point. I don't see another way out for Pavel.
This ping has to go onto the Azure Drake, right? Because this is the minion he cannot clear if it gets rehealed. Now, that's a rather suspect ping, right? But the first thing it makes you think of is, okay, he's setting my multiple minions to 4. So maybe it's just Flame Strike that I'm worried about. Can I just commit into this? If so, can you go that next level deeper and work out that it's the Volcanic Potion Flame Strike combination that's coming up?
Definitely a tough question. DocPwn doesn't really seem to care too much at this point. He is just, if he thinks it's Flame Strike, he's just throwing his Bran away, but getting the value from the Nether Spike, which is pretty much all that's left to get the value from in his deck, as far as I can recall. So already, Alexstrasza, there's a Deathwing. It'll be interesting if he goes for it. I do like it in this instance, though.
Well, the other two options are just very, very weak. They are two of the weakest dragons in the game, so maybe Deathwing is the final insurance policy here, although I can't see it having a relevant impact on this game either, and DocPwn just has to be a little bit careful. He's starting to talk to himself just a little bit on his camera.
And he is wearing a hat. I
Yes.
see a connection here.
Gonna go ahead and Holy Nova to get that triple heal on his minions, which means now Flame Strike and Volcanic Potion has been lined up. DocPwn did not nail the read on the situation. Pavel maybe has found himself a window here.
Yep, and there's Pyroblast. There is only 7 cards left in the deck. Needs to be Alexstrasza, and there needs to be some more damage as well. So this is going to be a tough one because DocPwn slams Deathwing. 12-12 on the board. Which wouldn't be too bad if his opponent was at 12.
I wonder.
Do you just like Alexstrasza here?
Alexstrasza heal your opponent for 2.
Yeah.
Yep.
I'd take it.
I think it's the play.
Yeah. Nothing else puts anywhere near the kind of pressure this does. You've seen so much hard removal from Pavel in this game. Can he answer an 8-8? And again, well, he can. We can see oh my god, there's Alexstrasza as well. He's piecing together the puzzle, but is it going to be enough? He can Pyroblast his opponent's Alexstrasza, but that is just such a removal of damage that he pretty much needs to end this game, I feel. His own Alexstrasza isn't going to be reliable enough to get the damage in past the 15 he's going to set DocPwn to, because Pavel will be fully aware that all the deaths have not been used this game.
Alexstrasza just, it's not going to get there. The Alex just definitely gets removed the next turn. You're giving weird niche lethal outs to your opponent, and you're also, there's just no single card that gets through just the 2 natural healing back up to 17 that DocPwn has available to him. There's no one card that finishes the game.
So is Alexstrasza into Ice Lance ever something to consider?
It's Pyro. It's Pyro the 8-8. This is the play. Your win
tough.
condition now is Archmage Antonidas. This is just the only way it makes sense.
Yeah, so Alexstrasza Ice Lance, you know, your Alexstrasza will die, but it stops the return swing at least, so then you can make a decision on your next draw if you're going to Pyroblast. But if you were ever going to Pyroblast, you may as well do it first. So that decision is a very small outcome that could even be a benefit. There's a second Ice Lance. So does Alex just have to come down this turn now?
Well, here's a factor. I mean, there's nothing else to do, which means that we'll probably end up seeing an Alexstrasza this turn. But there is a factor when you're playing against Priest, where you want to reduce the gap between Alexstrasza you and kill you to as fewer turns as possible. Because each turn you wait, there is an incremental life gain coming back from the Priest, so you give them more time to escape your range. You don't want to, against Priest, be pushing in a situation where you're relying on top decks. You want to have your plan all laid out, then just go 1, 2, 3 punch as quick as you can.
Yeah.
So the counter question to that is, does Pavel have too much time to hang around here? Which the answer to that is probably no. But being this deep in the game and having not seen a single Shadow of Death come out either, it means that he has no hope of this 8-8 really sticking to the board. So it's a very, very tricky situation for Pavel to navigate.
Yeah, I mean, Alexstrasza may as well read just 9 mana, put your opponent to 15, and that's it. No minion.
Eat 3 of their mana.
Yeah, sure. Because the minion won't matter too much at this point. And Pavel,
He's going to wait.
he's going to ping.
I mean, I think the reasoning I explained is exactly what's going through Pavel's head here. He knows he needs to make sure the gap is as small as possible. But Tony number 3 is coming. Unlucky.
So this is very important, though, because this gives Doc some information as to what's not in Pavel's hand. So then he can help it start, piece together what is. There's 3 out of the 5 cards. He knows that he did see Antonidas a couple of times, of course, but it's not to say he hasn't drawn it yet. So he can start piece together what is available and that with the knowledge that Pavel just pinged last turn on full mana, maybe he can get some guesses as to what's there.
You can see continuing to talk to himself now. He is just trying to solve this game as best he can. He's receiving almost complete information about the game state right now. The fact there's 5 cards left in the deck, he's looking at 3 of them. He can start to build almost a complete picture of how this game is progressing.
Yeah, this game, you know, we said it was probably going to be a long one, as this is generally how the matchup plays out on average. But it's not going to last much longer as the players are getting to the ends of the decks.
And this is looking like road's end for Pavel very soon in this particular matchup, at least. He has struggled valiantly to find himself a win condition in this matchup, but just hasn't been able to put it together. DocPwn looking like he is going to finish this game out in the very, very near future. That Ice Lance now just to preserve his own health total, just that 1 turn longer, but that now yet again is even more burn being taken away from Pavel's combo kill.
Yeah, Antonidas being this low in the deck is becoming a huge problem for Pavel, as we said it straight, you know, right at the beginning, playing a burnout pretty much. You just want to kill off the priest after the Alexstrasza, and the Antonidas fireballs are a huge deal in that, and Antonidas just not being drawn means Pavel hasn't had all the tools he would normally have to actually make this happen. Still doesn't have the Antonidas, so it's going to have to be an Alexstrasza to self to stay alive in this game for now. But it's just going to get deathed.
Yeah, that seems to be a fairly slow, inevitable march to fatigue if he goes down that line. See if Pavel can find anything more creative here, but I'm not seeing it. He is just going to stick us out. He's already pointed that at his own face on 2 occasions now, just bailing out at the last second, but now does commit to the line. This is the best of a bad bunch of plays available to Pavel. He knows after the 4-0 sweep of Yolsik, making it look like this was going to be an easy road through the lower bracket, DocPwn has shown up and said, no, no such thing, my friend. You might be the world champion, but my experience can help me get into a position where I can challenge you and make my name against one of the very best in Hearthstone.
Yeah, and DocPwn has pretty much still got answers in his hand for every single possible outcome here that Pavel can even give him. Now even Talon Priest still just helping push these minions out of any kind of damage range. Not that I think there's any realistic damage left in the deck outside of the Antonidas fireballs. And then still just got the Deathwing for emergency situations. The most important factor, of course, is that DocPwn is still on 30 health. There is a long way to go once you Alexstrasza yourself in this matchup.
DocPwn now just considering his options now, because there is one way and one way alone that he loses this matchup, and that's the next threat that comes out, sticking to the board over the long term and just somehow digging Pavel out of this with infinite fireballs. So just a small concern about whether he needed to use that Shadow Earth Death in that situation. There was actually an opportunity on the previous turn. He could have killed the Emperor using Dragonfire Potion and preserved both deaths in his hand to line up against those remaining 2 threats, as finally Tony shows up to the party in the class that he's supposed to be played in, having already made 2 cameos in the class that just steals everyone else's stuff.
Imagine if Pavel just pulls out 4 Sorcerer's Apprentice out of nowhere. It's like, get him! Chain fireballs for days. But we can see Pavel is going to just try and draw through his deck. Cabal Courier is going to be a last-ditch attempt. He's got the coin for a 1-mana play that can save him in this game. And that is not going to be it. And DocPwn is taking the current world champion to the final game in this series and in this elimination match. From going down 0-2 to Pavel, he has evened everything up at 3-3. And we are going to the game 7.
Yeah. Huge road back from DocPwn. People counted him out. I'm going to be honest, I was amongst them. I thought he was dead and buried.
I knew he could do it.
When he was at 0-2. Easy for you to say now, but definitely nothing easy about this performance from DocPwn. He is scrapping away. The veteran of competitive gaming in general is finding a way back into this series. Squared up 3-3 now against the world champion.
Yep, and we are going to see Pavel, of course, on his mage again. It's the last deck he has to win with, since this is Conquest, of course, and DocPwn has the Shaman. Tell me a little bit about this deck, because I feel like the length of this series, we've not really spoken about it, and feels like a long time ago last time we saw him play.
Yeah, we haven't spoken about it. I don't believe we've seen it being played in this series, if that's incorrect. Please forgive me. We've seen a lot of games, a lot of Shamans over this week, but this is a pure mid-range from DocPwn. It's only got a small amount of Jade cards in there, just the Jade Lightnings, the Jade Claws, and the Aya Blackpaw. Then it's got things from below, it's got Bloodlust, and a single copy of Thunder Bluff Valiant, which we saw make an unwelcome appearance for Pavel in the previous game.
Yeah, and DocPwn, I know you have a gripe about things such as Tunnel Trog coming out from a mid-range Shaman all of the time on turn 1, but Pavel does have the Doomsayer available to him, and there is no great answers really. Well, there are answers if he really wants to. But do you really want to in this situation, Sol? Is it worth?
I mean, it's a big commitment for sure.
Exactly.
Did
you develop the Flame Tongue?
Wait, what's your play?
Oh, I was going to Flame Tongue, Coin, Lightning Bolt.
Flame Tongue, Coin, Lightning Bolt is 3, 4, 7. Yeah, it would be a massive commitment though.
I like the way you checked. Can I count to 7 maths?
I mean, stranger things have happened. It looks like DocPwn is going to go for it. It does overload him significantly, but he does still have the J-Claws follow-up on the next turn, so we'll keep developing. Most importantly, if you see tempo to the control deck this early in this matchup, that probably spells death. So the recognition of the situation here, pretty strong, but Pavel not going to be perturbed by this, just going to keep on developing, keep on cycling, try and get into some of his board freeze, board stall, and AoE effects in the future turns.
Whereas DocPwn is just going to drop a Totem Golem on him, I believe, on this turn. Raw indeed. J-Claws can be played and was probably the go-to plan before this card was drawn, but J-Claws is not needed this turn because I have no doubt that DocPwn wants to kill this Acolyte in one hit, and that is what the Tunnel Trog is for.
Yeah, J-Claws is not the most ridiculous thing. It puts like a small token on the board that can potentially get value out of the Flame Tongue totem, but...
Totem Golem's a Totem Golem. That's my in-depth explanation.
Is a strong counter-argument, yeah. I got nothing to come back against that. Totem Golem, one of the biggest terrors in the game since the day it was released, and soon to be dearly departed.
Pavel's best friend, the Babbling Book, coming out for him there. Getting their Torch means he can choose to clear off the Tunnel Trog if he really wants, or the Flame Tongue. Always a hard decision, as it's never really a straightforward play.
Yeah, X-Hope may have a special relationship with a hat, but Pavel has a special relationship with a book. This is quite literally the card that gives him what he needs on demand, famously with that polymorph in the World Championship run against Amnesiac.
Yeah. And now J-Claws seems, although off curve, a little bit more smooth, as you're going to get that instant value by one overloading onto the Trog for a +1 and clearing up the Babbling Book very, very easily. And now Pavel can use one of his 5-drops here just on curve, but the mid-range Shaman shouldn't do this. This is so much damage that's available. We can see Bloodlust is available, not this turn because of the overload.
Oh, boy.
Okay. Okay.
This is getting serious. This is what mid-range Shaman will do to you if it just manages to successfully roleplay as an aggro deck somehow. How does this deck manage to do this with such consistency?
Shaman. That's how.
Good explanation.
It's just what it does. We've seen Shaman actually, drop in the class picks, in this tournament because of the nerfs we discussed previously throughout the past couple of days. And it's actually had one of the best win rates as a class in this tournament, nearing 60%, which is pretty impressive. That was a little bit earlier on, I think. I'm not sure exactly how the percentages look at this moment in time. But DocPwn is feeling pretty good. Are you surprised with this trade?
A little bit, yeah. Choosing to trade here might just give Pavel a turn or two. Does he have lethal set up? There is 9 on board, plus 9 more from the Bloodlust, meaning that Pavel can play his Emperor here. Is that too passive from DocPwn? Is that moment of weakness going to cost him in this series?
Maelstrom Portal into Boar, just for extra minions. It's not going to be able to do anything because of Bloodlust. It's going to be 1 mana off, but I don't know. That looks crazy to me. He didn't need to trade. I mean, the idea is he would have lost the thing from below anyway with a ping, but that would have also reduced Pavel's turn down because of the ping. 2 mana means that, you can't just curve out bigger minions, curve out Emperor for the value, even, as your Drake. There just aren't that many good plays Pavel can do with 4 mana at the rest of the game.
And the simple fact that he would have dealt 6 additional damage already. I mean, what he did, it plays around Reno. It keeps clean control of the board. It means if Reno comes down, he's kept the game progressing on his terms.
Yeah, this is, you know, maybe we're putting this across incorrectly. This is not a strictly wrong play. We are not saying that in any way, shape, or form. It is just with Bloodlust available in such a strong position, one hit to face with that Trog sets up lethal unless something truly crazy happens. DocPwn is now going to trade away the Emperor with the help of the Totem Golem and has still gone very wide on the board. Pavel is under a lot of pressure and doesn't really have a great way to deal with any of this. Arcane Select coming out for him now to cycle into some options. The reduction is going to help with the Fireball and the Nova, but never mind, he can stall this game out if he wants. But he can just Fireball Ping to reduce, you know, the board down to an effect where there's 2 power on the board. Are you really bothered about Frost Nova versus being able to do that instead? You can save Frost Nova for next turn.
Yeah, no, I'm not suggesting it here. It's just the long-term ability for him to stall is just growing piece by piece here. Now he can potentially Kazakus and Frost Nova in the same turn, which locks out the board.
Is that a weapon?
That's Jake.
That's the weapon. That is going to be exact damage to finish this game. DocPwn looked up and
he's going to count.
I was going to say
he's going to take his
stalling,
time here.
but that is it. DocPwn takes down the world champion, knocks him out of this tournament, and it's going to be DocPwn from a 0-2 down start against Pavel, going to be taking this series and moving on in this tournament.
Incredible performance. I just said it, but a ton of people had already counted him out as you see the world champion depart the stage there. But the story right now is all about this guy, the veteran competitive gamer in so many different disciplines. Card games, video games, foosball as well we've seen thrown in there now.
He can probably juggle 2 at this point.
It's more than likely. His experience shone through. He recovered from what was a very, very shaky start to now be just 1 game away from booking his spot at the World Championship, and you can see how he's done it now.
Yeah, and we can check out what the bracket is going to look like. Steinudashi versus Lovely Chuk, LVGE versus the winner of Green Cheap and Samuel Zhao, Nyria versus Frozen, and Tare versus DocPwn. What a set of games we have got coming up later on today. This is absolutely amazing, and also what's amazing was that match we just got to witness, and Rachel is with the winner, DocPwn.
You guys are not kidding. That was shocking, and nobody looks more shocked than you, DocPwn. What's going through your head right now?
Well, to be honest, I'm a bit shaken up. I was praying for that top deck there for the last 2 turns. The boat or the boat the last turn, and then add many more outs on that one, and praying he didn't add Reno too, and he didn't have it, I guess. So yeah, it's amazing.
Well, we talked to you before this whole tournament started, and you said if there's one thing you want to do, I would really like to beat the world champion. So tell me about your emotions right now. What are you feeling? You accomplished your goal.
Yeah, well, it's quite an accomplishment. He's a really great player, a really great person. He's really funny, and really appreciate him. But he had this time, but now it's maybe it's someone else's time. So I'm pretty happy. I beat Pavel.
Well, would you say that this is no longer a young man's game?
Oh yeah, now it's not. Maybe. It's balancing a bit more it's more like a whole game now for me now. So
You can inspire a whole new generation of players, maybe. So good luck to you. Thanks for an incredible game. We certainly enjoyed that backstage. Now back to the casters for a little bit more.
Thanks a lot, Rachel. An absolutely amazing series, and we hear a round of applause again for DocPwn. A huge achievement, taking down the world champion and moving on to top 8. What a series. That was amazing.
Yeah, clearly means a lot to him as well. You know, a little bit lost for words there at the end, and who can blame him? You know, coming in, defeating the man with one of the strongest streaks in terms of tournament victories that we've ever seen in Hearthstone, and that 75% win rate dominance in HCT overall, the current world champion. He's put the streak to the end, but the Hearthstone action for the day is not over just yet. There is still plenty of great action to come.
Yeah, we checked out the bracket and it's looking fantastic. One more match to decide who's going to be coming up into the top 8 as we continue the Hearthstone Championship Tour.